"Sign this before dessert," my daughter said. Chelsea set a thick bank packet beside my dinner plate and rested her hand on it for a second. We were in her dining room at 418 Hazel Street in Oshkosh. The roast chicken was still warm. Matthew had been talking about work vans and saw storage like he'd already bought them. I looked at Chelsea. She smiled, but she didn't sit down. "What am I signing?" "It's just for the business," she said. "Matthew can explain it better." Her husband reached for the packet, then stopped before touching it. "It's standard bank stuff, James." The apple crisp sat on the kitchen counter behind him. Chelsea had made it the way her mother used to, with more oats than flour. I could smell cinnamon every time the furnace came on. I opened the packet. My name was already printed in 3 places. That was the moment I understood dessert wasn't the reason I'd been invited. My name is James Horton. I'm 68 years old. Before I tell you what I found in that packet, what city are you listening from? To explain why I was sitting there at all, I have to go back to when my wife, Meredith, died. Meredith was 61. We'd been married long enough that silence had become useful. I could tell what she wanted from the way she shut a cabinet. She knew I was worried if I swept the workshop twice in one day. After she was gone, the house got too organized. I washed 1 coffee cup every morning. I folded the dish towel over the oven handle exactly the way she had. At night, I checked both doors even though I knew they were locked. Then I sat at the kitchen table and listened to the refrigerator. Chelsea came by often during the first month. She brought soup, took half of it home, and filled the quiet with little jobs. "Dad, your phone needs updating. Dad, give me those pharmacy receipts. Dad, you shouldn't be on the ladder alone." I liked hearing her say dad. That's the truth of it. After a while, she stopped coming unless something needed doing. At first, I didn't notice the change because the calls still came. The bathroom fan is making a grinding sound. The back step feels loose. Matthew's truck won't start. Each request gave me somewhere to be. I'd spent most of my working life remodeling houses. Kitchens, additions, porches, basements, whatever, kept a crew busy through a Wisconsin winter. I knew how to find a bowed wall before opening it. I could hear a bad bearing in a fan. I kept labeled coffee cans of screws because throwing out good hardware felt wrong. Chelsea knew all that. One Saturday, she called about water under her kitchen sink. I drove to Hazel Street with my tool bag and found a loose compression fitting. It took 12 minutes. Chelsea stood beside me while I tightened it. "I would have called a plumber," she said, "but they wanted almost $200 just to come out." "You didn't need one. I know. That's why I called you." I carried that sentence home like it meant more than it did. The next week, Matthew needed help replacing a garage service door. Then, their washing machine leaked. Then Chelsea's car needed front brakes, and somehow that became my emergency too. I paid the repair bill because she sounded tired. She said, "I'll get you back." I said, "Don't worry about it." That became our system. She hinted. I offered, she protested once. Then I paid or fixed whatever it was. Afterward, we'd have coffee if she wasn't busy. I told myself this was how family worked. Meredith would have helped Chelsea. Therefore, helping Chelsea kept part of Meredith's work going. It took me a long time to admit there was another part. I was afraid that if I stopped being useful, the calls would stop too. Matthew had worked around construction without settling into one trade. He'd sold flooring, estimated roofing jobs, and managed deliveries for a lumber yard. He spoke confidently about labor he'd rarely done himself. That didn't make him dishonest. Plenty of good business owners don't swing hammers. Still, Matthew liked the beginning of things more than the middle. He liked company names, truck graphics, and new tool catalogs. One afternoon in late 2025, he came to my workshop carrying 2 coffees and a folder. He cleared a space on my bench without asking. "I'm starting my own outfit," he said. "What kind?" "Residential remodeling. Kitchens, baths, decks, additions eventually." He opened the folder. The first page had a logo for Rhodes Home Renewal. The roof line in the logo slanted in a way no roof should. "You already registered it? Everything's moving." That was Matthew's favorite answer when the real answer was no. Chelsea came in through the side door a few minutes later. She had my mail in one hand. "This was sticking out of your box," she said. I looked toward the road. My mailbox was closed when I'd come in. "Which piece?" "Just these." She placed 2 envelopes on my desk. One was an electric bill. The other was an advertisement from an insurance agency. I didn't think much about it then. Chelsea had always been the sort to straighten a crooked picture in somebody else's house. Matthew tapped the folder. "Tell him what we talked about." Chelsea leaned against the workbench. Matthew needs a qualifier. I knew what she meant. In Wisconsin, a business doing certain dwelling work needs the right credentials behind it. I'd kept my dwelling contractor qualifier certification current after retirement, partly from habit, partly because an old customer sometimes called with a question, and partly because letting it lapse felt too much like closing the workshop for good. I looked at Matthew. You're asking me to work for the company? Part-time, he said quickly. Very part-time. Mostly reviewing jobs and making sure we're doing things right. That's still work. Of course. We'd pay you. Chelsea put my mail into a neat stack. It would give you something to do, Dad. I was in my workshop at 10 on a Tuesday morning. I already had something to do. I was rebuilding a set of cabinet doors for a neighbor. I didn't say that. Matthew showed me an employment letter. It named Rhodes Home Renewal as the employer, and me as a part-time employee serving as its qualifier. The wage was small enough to be almost decorative. I'm not putting my name on work I haven't seen, I said. You wouldn't have to. I'd review plans, I'd visit jobs. If something's wrong, it gets corrected. Absolutely. And I'm not lending out my certification number like a tool. He gave a short laugh. That's why we want you involved. You're careful. Chelsea touched my arm. Mom would have loved seeing you and Matthew do something together. There was no cruelty in her voice. That made it more effective. I read the letter again. It said the employment was at will. Either side could end it. The language was plain. I already understood what that meant. I'd used similar letters when I had a small crew. I asked Matthew, how many signed jobs do you have? Nothing signed yet? I'm building the foundation. What's your cash reserve? We're handling that. How much insurance? I've got quotes. Each answer slid sideways. I should have closed the folder. Instead, I pictured Sunday dinners where Matthew asked my opinion. I pictured Chelsea stopping by the workshop because she wanted to, not because a pipe leaked. I pictured teaching someone the things I'd learned before there was no one left who cared. I said, I'll review the full arrangement first. Chelsea smiled. That's all we're asking. It wasn't all they were asking. It was only all they were asking that day. I spent the next week checking the company information and making a list of conditions. Matthew needed insurance before any job started. I wanted copies of contracts. I had to review permit work before submission. If he ignored a correction, I was done. When I handed him the list, he read it standing beside my drill press. This is a lot for a part-time position. It's my name. It's the company's permit. It's my certification. He looked at Chelsea. She was sitting on a stool, scrolling through her phone. She said, Matthew, Dad's just being careful. Then she looked at me. And you want this to work, right? I signed the employment letter that afternoon. Matthew shook my hand. Chelsea hugged me. We ordered pizza and ate it in the workshop from paper plates. For the first time since Meredith died, 3 voices filled that room. I put my copy of the letter in the filing cabinet beside my certification record. The drawer stuck halfway, as it always did. I lifted it slightly, pushed it closed, and turned the little brass key. Matthew noticed. You lock paperwork in here? Important paperwork. He smiled. You always were old school. For the first few months, the company was mostly phone calls and planning. Matthew sent me pictures of possible jobs. I corrected measurements, explained which walls needed more investigation, and told him not to promise schedules before checking material lead times. He usually listened. That was the tiny reward that kept me involved. When I said a proposed bathroom layout wouldn't leave enough clearance, he changed it. When I caught missing flashing in a deck estimate, he thanked me. Chelsea started calling on Sundays. How's retirement treating you, employee of the month? Your husband pays me like employee of the minute. She laughed. Those calls rarely lasted more than 5 minutes, but I waited for them. I'd pour coffee before the phone rang. Then the favors started mixing with company work. Matthew asked me to inspect a used trailer he wanted. Chelsea asked if I could cover the registration because their checking account was tight. Matthew needed help pricing a kitchen. Chelsea wondered if I could replace their dining room light while I was there. I kept saying yes. One afternoon, I arrived at Hazel Street and found several pamphlets spread across the dining room table. They were about senior transportation, home assistance, medication management, and financial safety for older adults. Chelsea gathered them quickly. What are those for? I asked. Nothing. I picked them up for a friend. Which friend? She paused. Someone at work. Her father's having trouble. Matthew came in from the kitchen. Coffee, James? Chelsea slid the pamphlets into a drawer. I watched her close it. At first I thought she was embarrassed about another family's business. Then Matthew asked whether I still handled all my bills by mail. Most of them. You should let Chelsea move everything online. I know how to use a computer. I didn't say you didn't. Chelsea brought my coffee and set it down too hard. A little went over the rim. He's just trying to help, Dad. I wiped the spill with my thumb. No one asked me if I needed help. The room went quiet. Then Matthew changed the subject to a potential customer on the west side. He described a basement remodel and asked whether I could visit if the homeowner called back. I said I could. On the drive home, I kept thinking about those pamphlets. I also thought about my mail in Chelsea's hand the day Matthew first brought the employment letter. Neither thing proved anything. They were small details, and families produce small, odd details all the time. Still, that evening I walked to the mailbox before dinner. It was empty. The next morning, I heard a car door outside. By the time I reached the front window, Chelsea was standing at my mailbox. She removed something, looked toward the house, and put it back. I opened the front door. Chelsea! She turned so fast that an envelope slipped from her hand. I was just passing by. You were checking my mail. The door was hanging open. No, it wasn't. She picked up the envelope and brought it to me. It was a bank statement. You shouldn't leave these sitting out, she said. It wasn't sitting out. It was in my mailbox. That's what I mean. She held it a second longer than necessary. I took it from her. What are you looking for? Her face changed. Not much, but enough. I'm looking out for you. Those aren't the same thing. She folded her arms against the cold. Fine, forget it. She walked back to her car without coming inside. I stood on the porch in my slippers, holding the statement while the wind pushed dry leaves along the driveway. That afternoon, I drove to the post office and rented a box. I didn't tell Chelsea. I didn't call Matthew. I simply redirected my financial mail and put the new key on the ring with the brass key to my workshop cabinet. It was a small thing, but it was the first useful thing I'd done in months that wasn't for either of them. Chelsea noticed within a week. She called on a Thursday evening while I was cleaning paintbrushes. Did you change something with your bank? I held the phone away from my ear and looked at it. What do you mean? Your statements aren't coming to the house. My house? You know what I mean. No, I don't. She went quiet. I turned off the utility sink and waited. Finally, she said, I was helping you keep track of things. You never told me that. I didn't think I needed to make an announcement. You opened my statements, I checked the balances. The brush in my hand dripped water onto the concrete. How long? Dad, don't make it sound like that. Like what? Like I was sneaking around? You took mail out of my box and checked my bank balances. I put everything back. That answer bothered me more than a denial would have. I set the brush on a rag. How long, Chelsea? A few months? Maybe? Why? Because you've been paying for things and then forgetting about them. What did I forget? She sighed. Matthew's trailer registration, my brake repair, the money you gave us for the furnace. I didn't forget any of those. You forgot you said the brakes were a gift. No, you said you'd repay me. I told you not to worry about it. That means a gift. It means I didn't want to argue in the repair shop. Her voice sharpened. This is exactly why somebody needs to help. I stood beside my sink with a wet brush and listened to my daughter explain my own money to me. Did Matthew know you were doing this? He knows I worry. That wasn't my question. Why are you turning this into a fight? I'm asking who knew what. He knew I checked on things sometimes. I looked toward the filing cabinet. The brass key was in my pocket. Don't touch my mail again. I was protecting you. From what? You're too trusting. That almost made me laugh. Chelsea, the only people you found me giving money to were you and Matthew. She hung up. I stayed in the workshop another hour, though I'd finished what I was doing. When I went inside, I heated canned soup and ate it over the sink. The following Sunday, the phone didn't ring. I made coffee anyway. At 11, I poured it out and scrubbed the pot. By Tuesday, I'd convinced myself she was busy. On Wednesday, I found a box of cabinet knobs I thought might suit the built-in at Hazel Street. Chelsea had mentioned replacing the old brass ones. I put the box in my truck. Halfway there, I realized what I was doing. She hadn't asked for the knobs. I was bringing them because I wanted a reason to knock on her door. I drove past Hazel Street and kept going. At home, I carried the box back into the workshop. I set it on the bench. 10 minutes later, I moved it to a shelf where I wouldn't see it. Matthew called that afternoon. "I've got a kitchen lead," he said. "Can you look at some pictures? Send them. I was thinking you could swing by. When? Now would be ideal." I looked at the cabinet doors waiting for their final coat. "I can come at 4. The homeowner wants a number today. Then you should have called me yesterday." He made a sound like he was clearing his throat. "4's fine." When I arrived, Chelsea's car was in the driveway. I knocked anyway. Matthew opened the door with his phone in one hand. "Come in. I've got everything on the laptop." Chelsea was at the dining room table with a stack of bills. She didn't look up. "Hi," I said. "Hi." Matthew opened several photographs of a kitchen. The cabinets were old maple, the counters were laminate, and one wall separated the kitchen from a narrow dining area. "The customer wants this wall gone," he said. "Did you inspect above it?" "I've got pictures." "Pictures of what?" "The basement. That's below it." He enlarged an image of floor joists. "See? They run this way." "Maybe." "What's above the kitchen?" "Bedrooms." "Then I need to see the attic or the roof framing." He leaned back. "You think it's carrying load?" "I think I don't know yet." "The customer wants an open plan. The house doesn't care what the customer wants." Chelsea looked up from the bills. "Can't you just tell him what it might cost?" "I can tell him what an inspection costs." Matthew closed the laptop halfway. "If I go back without a number, he'll call somebody else. If you give him the wrong number, you'll pay to do the job. I need something." I picked up a pencil and drew a rough wall section on the back of an envelope. I showed him where the load could transfer and what he needed to photograph. "If the roof bears here, you may need a beam. If it doesn't, you still have electrical and ductwork to check. How much for the beam? What size is it? That's what I'm asking you. I can't size a beam from a kitchen photo." Chelsea pushed her chair back. "You don't have to talk to him like he's stupid. I'm telling him what I need. He's trying to get his first real job, and I'm trying to keep his first real job from costing him money." Matthew raised both hands. "Let's take the temperature down." I hadn't raised my voice. He reopened the laptop and wrote down my questions. We spent 40 minutes going through the pictures. By the end, he had a list for the homeowner and a price range that clearly excluded structural work. "That helps," he said. "That's what I'm here for." I meant it plainly. Still, Chelsea gave me a look. Matthew walked me to the front door. Before I stepped outside, he lowered his voice. "She's upset about the mail. I know. She thought she was helping. She knew I wouldn't agree. That doesn't mean she had bad intentions. It means she knew I wouldn't agree." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Can you just call her?" "She can call me. She's your daughter, and I'm her father." He looked toward the dining room. "I'm stuck in the middle here." "No, you're standing in your own hallway." I left before the conversation got worse. The next morning, Matthew sent me a message. The homeowner had agreed to let him inspect the attic. The wall did carry part of the roof load. He wrote, "Good catch." I stared at those 2 words longer than I should have. Then he asked if I could help work out the beam allowance. I did. The customer didn't sign anything that week, but Matthew avoided promising a cheap wall removal that could have hurt his new company. It was a useful answer. I'd done the work I'd agreed to do. When my first company paycheck arrived, the amount barely covered gas and coffee. I put it on the kitchen table and looked at Meredith's chair. She used to say I could turn any favor into a full workday. "You don't know how to do half a job," she'd tell me. She didn't mean it as praise every time. I deposited the check at my new post office box branch. Then I bought groceries and went home. Chelsea called that night. "Matthew said you saved him from underbidding. He hadn't bid yet." "You know what I mean? How are you?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "I'm fine. How's work?" "Busy." "Are you still doing that training program?" "I finished it last month. I hadn't known." "Did it go well?" "Yes." "That's good." Another silence opened. Then she said, "Our garbage disposal is humming." I closed my eyes. "Is there something stuck in it?" "I don't know. Did you turn it off at the breaker?" "No. Do that first. Could you come look?" It was after 7. Freezing rain had started tapping the kitchen window. "I can come tomorrow. We can't use the sink." "You can use the other side. Don't run the disposal." She sounded disappointed. "You used to just come." I said I'll come tomorrow. "All right." After we hung up, I stood by the window and watched ice collect on the truck. For years, I'd trained her to expect an immediate yes. She didn't have to ask clearly. She only had to describe a problem. I'd fill in the rest. The money worked the same way. Chelsea would say the furnace repair had been more than expected. I would ask how much. She'd hesitate. I'd offer. Then later, I'd remember the coffee we drank while the technician worked. I'd remember her hugging me at the door. I had treated payment like admission. That wasn't something Chelsea had invented by herself. The next morning, I arrived at Hazel Street at 9. The roads were wet but clear. The disposal had a chicken bone jammed between the plate and the wall. I freed it with the proper wrench and reset the motor. Chelsea stood at the counter in her work clothes. That's it. That's it. She poured coffee into 2 mugs. I sat at the table. She placed one in front of me and checked the time on her phone. I have to leave in 15 minutes. I know. Matthew said you gave him a hard time about the kitchen. I stopped him from guessing. He feels like you don't trust him. I don't trust guesses. You know he's under pressure. What pressure? She stirred her coffee, though she hadn't added anything. He's trying to build something. I want him to build it correctly. He needs confidence too. Confidence won't hold up a roof. She set down the spoon. You always do that. Do what? Reduce everything to a repair. I almost answered quickly. Then I looked at the disposal wrench beside my coat. You called me because of a repair. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? She checked her phone again. I don't have time for this. You brought it up. I said I have to leave. She carried her mug to the sink without finishing it. I took mine with me. At the front door, she said, You could have called me Sunday. You could have called me. I was waiting to see if you would. So was I. Neither of us knew what to do with that. I drove home with the coffee cooling in my cup holder. That afternoon, I pulled a wall calendar from the previous year out of my desk drawer. Meredith had taught me to write appointments down, even after I started keeping them on my phone. I went through the pages. Chelsea's visits were easy to spot. I'd marked her name beside things like faucet, brakes, porch light, furnace, and taxes. Matthew appeared beside trailer, estimate, door, insurance, and company forms. I checked my phone records too. There were calls I hadn't written down, but I remembered most of them. A flat tire, a question about caulk, money for an insurance deductible, help moving a dresser, advice about a contractor's invoice. I found 1 birthday dinner and 2 holiday meals. Everything else had a task attached. The pattern wasn't hidden. I'd recorded it myself. I sat at my desk until the workshop got dark. I didn't turn on the overhead lights. The calendar pages were pale squares in front of me. My phone buzzed. Chelsea had sent a message. Can you come for lunch Tuesday? I want us to talk. I asked someone to join us who helps families with planning. I read it twice. A month earlier, I would have answered yes and asked what she needed me to bring. This time, I typed, what's the person's name and what kind of planning? I sent it before I could soften the question. Then I turned on the desk lamp and waited for her answer. Her answer came 20 minutes later. Linda Carver. She helps older people stay independent. That wasn't what I'd asked. What kind of planning? 3 dots appeared, vanished, then came back. Home and financial planning. It's just lunch. I set the phone down without answering. The next morning, I searched Linda's name. Her office was on the north side of Oshkosh. She called herself an aging life care consultant. Her website talked about home safety, transportation, medical appointments, bill management, and communication between adult children and aging parents. I called when the office opened. Linda answered herself. My daughter invited you to lunch next Tuesday, I said. She says you're coming to discuss family planning. There was a pause. Is this James? Yes. I'm glad you called. What did she hire you to do? She chose her words carefully. Chelsea requested an initial family consultation. About whose needs? Yours. Did she tell you I agreed? She said you were open to a conversation. I learned your name last night. Another pause. I understand, she said. Where did she say the meeting would be? At her home. Why not mine, if this is a home assessment? She thought you'd be more comfortable there. I looked around my kitchen. The counters were clear. The morning paper was folded beside my coffee. Nothing about the rooms suggested I needed to be moved somewhere more comfortable. What concerns did she give you? I can't discuss everything another client told me. Then I can't agree to an assessment. That's fair. I'll come to lunch. I won't sign a consent form until I know exactly what you've been told. Linda's voice relaxed slightly. That's also fair. Before we ended the call, I asked one more question. Did Chelsea tell you I was having trouble with money? She mentioned some confusion around bills and payments. I wrote that down on the back of an envelope. What kind of confusion? That's something the three of us should discuss together. I thanked her and hung up. The first deliberate thing I did was gather my own records. I didn't build a case. I wasn't preparing for court. I simply wanted to know whether Chelsea had seen something I'd missed. I pulled 6 months of electric bills, insurance statements, property tax receipts, and bank records. I checked every payment. Nothing was late. Nothing had been paid twice. I opened the small notebook where I recorded personal loans and gifts. The entries involving Chelsea and Matthew were brief because I never expected repayment. Brake repair, furnace, trailer registration, a few smaller amounts. Beside the brake repair, I'd written, Chelsea offered repayment. Told her, wait. That matched my memory. I also checked my calendar. I'd missed one dental cleaning after Meredith died. I'd written the wrong time. The office rescheduled it for the next week. That was the only missed appointment I found. On Tuesday, I arrived at Hazel Street 5 minutes early. Linda's car was already parked outside. Chelsea opened the door before I knocked. You called her? Yes. Why? To ask what the meeting was about. You could have asked me. I did. She turned and walked toward the dining room. Lunch was chicken salad on croissants. Chelsea had put out Meredith's blue serving bowl, the one with a chip near the rim. Linda sat with a leather folder beside her plate. She was probably in her 50s. She wore a gray sweater and spoke in a calm voice that made every sentence sound pre-approved. James, thank you for coming. It's Chelsea's house. Chelsea gave me a quick look. Linda opened her folder. Before we start, I want to make something clear. This is voluntary. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not here to diagnose anyone. What are you here to do? To help families identify needs before a crisis? Whose idea was the crisis? Chelsea put down her fork. No one said there was a crisis. Linda looked between us. Maybe we should begin with the concerns that brought us together. That's what I'm asking for, I said. Chelsea leaned back. You've been alone since Mom died. You take unnecessary risks. You climb ladders. You give money away. You don't tell anyone where you're going. I live alone. Who am I supposed to report to? That attitude is the problem. What attitude? Like any question is an insult. Linda raised one hand slightly. Let's slow down. I reached into the envelope I'd brought. Did Chelsea tell you I'm confused about bills? Linda glanced at Chelsea. She expressed concern about financial organization. What did you say, Chelsea? Chelsea stared at the table. I said you've made payments you don't remember. Which ones? I don't have a list. I do. I placed my notebook beside my plate and opened it to the marked page. These are the payments involving you and Matthew. Tell me which one I forgot. She didn't touch the notebook. This is ridiculous. Is the list wrong? You're proving my point by bringing records to lunch. You invited a consultant to discuss my finances. Linda leaned forward. James, may I see the notebook? I slid it toward her. She read the entries without commenting. Then she looked at Chelsea. Were these payments gifts, loans, or shared expenses? Mostly gifts. Did he dispute making them? Not exactly. I waited. Linda asked, What do you mean when you said he didn't remember? Chelsea folded her napkin into a narrow strip. He changes how he describes things. The brake repair was a gift. Later, he said I offered to pay him back. I did offer, she added quickly. But then he told me not to. That's what the notebook says, Linda replied. Chelsea's face tightened. It's not just that. What else? I asked. The mail, the ladder, the way you sit in that house by yourself. Those are 3 different things. You know what I mean. No, I don't. Linda took a form from her folder. This is the information Chelsea provided when she contacted me. I think it may help if we go through it item by item. Chelsea reached for it. Is that necessary? I believe it is. Linda kept the form on her side of the table. She read the first concern. Possible missed household payments. I placed my electric insurance and tax records on the table. No missed payments. Chelsea looked embarrassed. You brought all that? I checked because you said I was confused. Linda reviewed the dates. She wasn't auditing me. She simply looked long enough to see that the papers matched what I'd said. The next concern was social withdrawal. I don't see people as much as I used to, I said. That part is true. Chelsea looked at me for the first time since I'd opened the envelope. Linda asked, Do you want more contact? Yes. With whom? I looked at Chelsea. She looked away. The room became very still. Linda continued. The third concern was unsafe home maintenance. Chelsea described me working from ladders and using power tools alone. I'm a retired carpenter, I said. I still use my workshop. Have you fallen? Linda asked. No. Any close calls? Not recently. Chelsea jumped in. You slipped cleaning the gutters. 4 years ago. Meredith was alive. You bruised your shoulder. I stepped down one rung too quickly. You could have broken your neck. I could also choke on this croissant. Linda gave me a patient look. Let's keep this useful. She asked whether I managed my own medication. I told her I took 1 blood pressure tablet each morning and showed her the reminder alarm on my phone. She asked about driving. I told her I avoided heavy snow when possible, but drove myself. She asked who had access to my accounts. No one, I said. Chelsea's eyes moved toward me. That's new. It's clear. Linda closed the folder. I don't see a reason to continue with a formal assessment today. Chelsea sat up. You've been here 40 minutes. That was enough to clarify the purpose of the meeting. So that's it? James didn't consent to an assessment. We had a family conversation. Chelsea pointed toward my papers. He came prepared to make me look dishonest. I answered before Linda could. I came prepared to find out if you were right. And you weren't right about the bills. Chelsea pushed her chair back. You don't understand how hard it is to be the only person watching out for you. I didn't ask you to watch me. That doesn't mean you don't need it. Linda placed a business card beside my notebook. If James wants support later, he can contact me directly. Chelsea stood. I'm the one who arranged this. Yes, Linda said. But the services would be for him. That was the small piece I needed. Chelsea could invite someone, describe me, and set a table. She couldn't turn the meeting into an assessment without my agreement. Linda packed her folder and left after declining coffee. She had performed the function Chelsea hired her for. It just hadn't produced the answer Chelsea expected. As soon as the front door closed, Chelsea took the plates to the kitchen. You embarrassed me. I asked questions. You brought bank records. They aren't bank records. They're paid bills. That's not the point. What was the point? To get you some help before something happens. What do you think is going to happen? She turned on the faucet and rinsed a clean plate. I don't know. Then why did you tell a stranger I couldn't manage my money? I said I was concerned. You said I missed payments. I thought you had. You checked my statements for months. She shut off the water. Do you hear yourself? You changed your mail because your daughter looked at it. I changed my mail because you looked at it without permission. You make everything sound ugly. I'm describing what happened. She left the plate in the sink and walked out of the kitchen. Matthew came home before I put on my coat. From the way he looked at Chelsea, I knew she'd already messaged him. How'd lunch go? He asked. Linda left. Chelsea answered from the hallway. He sabotaged it. Matthew looked at me. Why would you do that? I asked what she was assessing. She's there to help families. Then she should know whether the person wants help. He set his keys on the counter. Chelsea's been carrying a lot. What is she carrying? Concern. Responsibility. For what? He spread his hands. For you. I put on my coat. I manage my house, my money, my driving, and my work for your company. Which part belongs to Chelsea? That's not what I said. It's what I'm asking. Matthew glanced at the dining room table. My records were still spread there. You need to stop treating us like we're trying to take something. I haven't said that. You don't have to. Chelsea stood in the hallway with her arms folded. Maybe he shouldn't be involved in the company if he trusts us this little. Matthew turned toward her. Chelsea. What? He clearly thinks we're using him. Neither of them looked at me. I picked up my notebook and paid bills. My hands were steady, but I had to make 2 trips around the table because I nearly left the envelope behind. At the door, Matthew said, I'll call you about the Westside kitchen. Email me. Why? Because it's company work. I want the request and my response in the same place. He frowned. You want me to document every conversation? Every job question that uses my certification? That's going to slow everything down. Then keep the emails short. I drove home and made a new folder on my computer. I labeled it Rhodes Home Renewal. I saved the employment letter, my conditions, the kitchen photographs, and Matthew's message thanking me for catching the structural issue. Then I made a simple work log. The hours surprised me. Between site questions, pricing reviews, phone calls, and the trailer inspection, I'd worked far more than my pay reflected. I'd never submitted the hours. Matthew hadn't asked for them. I had treated most of the work as family help. Even though the company depended on it, I emailed him the log. I need company work kept separate from family favors. Please confirm which current jobs or documents use my qualifier number. His response came an hour later. No active permits. One serious customer. Nothing submitted. It was a careful answer. I hadn't asked only about submitted permits, I wrote back. Send me any current draft, contract, application, or company document bearing my name or qualifier number. He didn't respond that night. The next afternoon, I received a calendar invitation from him for Friday at 6 at Hazel Street. The description said, "Review first customer package and next steps." A separate message from Chelsea followed. "I'm making dinner. Can we please act like a family?" I looked at both messages. I still wanted the company to succeed. I also wanted one meal with my daughter that didn't begin with a broken appliance or end with a request for money. I accepted the invitation. Then I replied to Matthew, "Send the customer package before Friday." He answered almost at once, still assembling it. "We'll go through everything together." I added the meeting to my work log and printed his message. On Friday afternoon, I checked my email 3 times. Nothing from Matthew. At 5, I put the printed message into a plain folder. I also brought my work log and a copy of the conditions he'd accepted when I joined the company. I arrived at Hazel Street at 6. Chelsea opened the door, wearing the blue sweater Meredith had given her one Christmas. "You came," she said. I accepted the invitation. "I know, I just wasn't sure." She stepped aside and hugged me. I hugged her back, but she pulled away quickly. The dining table was already set. Matthew's business folder sat on a chair near the sideboard. I could smell roast chicken and onions. "Do you want coffee?" Chelsea asked. "Water's fine. Sit down. We're not doing business the second you walk in." I left my folder on the chair beside Matthew's. He came down the hall talking on his phone. "That sounds good," he said. "I'll confirm the schedule after Wednesday." "Yes, absolutely." He ended the call and smiled. That was our first customer. The West Side Kitchen? No, better. Full main floor remodel, signed. He looked at Chelsea. Signed. She smiled at me like she'd been holding the news all day. "That's good," I said. "Congratulations." Matthew shook my hand. I knew we'd get one. "What's the scope?" "Kitchen, flooring, a bathroom refresh, some wall changes. Any structural work?" "Nothing we can't handle." That answer was close enough to his old answers that I noticed it. "Do you have plans?" "In the folder. We'll get to it." Chelsea brought the chicken to the table. After dinner, we sat down. For the first few minutes, the conversation stayed ordinary. Chelsea talked about her training program. I asked what she'd learned. This time, she gave me a real answer. Matthew described a scheduling system he wanted to use. He planned to hire 2 workers once the first project started. He wanted matching shirts and magnetic signs for the truck. Lettered van eventually, he said. Something clean. Professional. "Work first," I said. He smiled. "Always." Chelsea asked whether I remembered the time Meredith painted our old bathroom yellow. She said it was cream, I said. It was yellow. It looked like mustard under the light. Chelsea laughed. For a few minutes, it felt like the dinner I'd wanted. Nobody asked me to fix anything. Nobody mentioned my mail. The consultant's name didn't come up. I relaxed enough to finish my chicken. Then Matthew started talking about equipment, a proper table saw, dust extraction, a trailer that doesn't need new bearings every 6 months. "The used one needs bearings?" I asked. "Not yet. I'm thinking ahead." He described storage racks, cordless tool sets, and enough working cash to cover materials before customer payments cleared. "How much cash do you have now?" I asked. "We're building it." "From what?" "The job deposit, the credit facility." "What credit facility?" Chelsea stood and began collecting plates. "Let's clear the table first." Matthew drank some water. "The bank approved a business line." "Approved or conditional?" "Conditional, technically." "On what?" He looked toward Chelsea. She carried the plates into the kitchen without answering. I picked up my folder from the chair. "You said we were reviewing the customer package." "We are." Matthew pulled his business folder onto the table. He took out a contract, a set of rough plans, and a draft permit application. The application had my name on it. My qualifier number was printed beneath the company information. I leaned closer. "Did you prepare this?" "It's a draft. You didn't send it when I asked. It wasn't ready. It has my number, because you're the qualifier." I read the scope line. Interior alteration, structural opening, electrical and plumbing by subcontractors. Who reviewed the wall opening? I have measurements. That's not what I asked. We're getting engineering. When? Before the permit appointment. I looked at the appointment notation attached to the application. Wednesday after next? Chelsea booked it. I turned toward the kitchen. You scheduled a permit appointment? She came back carrying 3 small dessert plates. The calendar fills up. You didn't tell me. We're telling you now. You scheduled my time without asking. We knew you'd want to be there for the first one. Matthew tapped the draft. This is exactly why we need you involved. I read the customer contract. The start date depended on the permit. The business had accepted a deposit. I didn't ask the amount. The important part was already clear. They'd committed to a schedule before I'd reviewed the job. Did you tell the customer the permit was pending? Of course. Did you tell the customer the structural review wasn't complete? Matthew's jaw tightened. We're not hiding anything. That wasn't my question. Chelsea placed the dessert plates on the sideboard. Can we not do this tonight? You invited me to review the package. And we will. She opened the sideboard drawer and removed a thick packet. I recognized the bank logo. She carried it to the table and placed it beside my dinner plate. Sign this before dessert, she said. For a second, no one moved. Then I opened the packet. My name was printed in 3 places. One page identified Rhodes Home Renewal as the borrower. Another identified me as guarantor. I read the first paragraph twice. This is a personal guarantee. Matthew shifted in his chair. It supports the line. How much? $80,000. Chelsea pulled out the chair beside me. You don't have to use all of it. I wouldn't be using any of it. The company would, Matthew said. And if the company doesn't pay, we'll pay. That's not what this says. I turned the page. The guarantee covered the full line. It continued if the bank renewed or extended it. It also included collection costs if the bank had to come after me. I looked for a limit tied to one purchase or one project. There wasn't one. This continues beyond the first draw. That's standard, Matthew said. How long? As long as the line is active. So the bank can renew the line, and I remain responsible. Technically, there was that word again. Chelsea touched the edge of the packet. The bank needed someone established behind the company. You mean someone with assets and credit? You have both. That doesn't answer me. Matthew leaned forward. We don't have enough operating history. That's normal for a new business. How much reserve do you have after buying materials for this job? He didn't answer. I closed the packet. Does the bank fund the line without my guarantee? Chelsea said, Dad. I looked at Matthew. Does it? No. And can you start this job without the line? We'd have to make other arrangements. What arrangements? We don't have them yet. That was the first honest answer of the evening. I looked at the permit application again. Can you get this permit without my qualifier employment? Matthew sat back. You're already employed. That isn't what I asked. The company needs an employed qualifier. Do you have another one? No, because we have you. Chelsea pushed the packet toward me. This is all connected. That's the point. I kept my hands in my lap. When did you know the bank required this? We got the final packet this week, she said. When this week? Tuesday. The day of Linda's visit. You invited me to dinner on Wednesday. We were already planning dinner. No. Matthew invited me to review a customer package. You called it dinner. Why are you separating everything? Chelsea asked. We're family. The business affects us. The debt affects me if I sign. You know Matthew isn't going to lose the money. Then the bank shouldn't need me. That's not how lending works, Matthew said. I understand how a guarantee works. He pressed his palms against the table. You're making it sound like we're asking you to hand us $80,000. You're asking me to promise the bank I will if you don't. Chelsea's face went red. You helped people your whole life. I still do. You helped Mom's cousins. You lent money to friends. You worked weekends for people who barely thanked you. That doesn't make this safe. Mom would sign it. The room went quiet. I looked at the blue sweater. Meredith had chosen it. I remembered standing beside her in the store while she held 2 shades against the light. Chelsea spoke more softly. She believed in family. Don't do that. Do what? Bring your mother into a bank document. She would be ashamed of how you're acting. Matthew said, Chelsea, leave that out of it. But he said it after the words had done their work. I pushed the packet away. I'm not signing. Chelsea stared at me. You haven't even read all of it. I read enough. Take it home. No. Have someone look at it. No. Matthew stood and walked toward the kitchen. He stopped at the counter, then turned around. We have a signed customer. You signed the customer before financing was settled. We have a permit appointment. You booked it before I reviewed the plans. Because things have to move. Then move them without my credit. His voice rose. You're already part of this business. I'm a part-time employee. You're the qualifier. Every plan we've made assumes you're with us. You never told me that. What did you think your role was? To review work and protect the permit side. Exactly. You gave us your name, your certification, your experience. Now, we finally have a job, and you're acting like you're just some outside consultant. My certification isn't a family asset. I didn't say it was. You said I owe you this because I already work for the company. I said we relied on you. Chelsea stood between us. Please sit down. Neither of us did. She looked at me. If you walk out now, you're abandoning us when it matters. I'm refusing a debt. You're killing the business. The business shouldn't depend on my house. We're not taking your house. It's a personal guarantee. The bank can collect from me. That would never happen. Then Matthew can sign a loan. He already did. Then why is my name here? She had no answer that didn't prove my point. Matthew returned to the table and placed one finger on the permit application. You can refuse the loan if you want, but don't pretend your qualifier role is separate. You agreed to help build this. I looked at his finger beside my printed number. The employment letter in my folder was at will. I had known that from the day I signed it. Until that moment, I had treated the right to leave as routine language. Now it was the only part of the arrangement they hadn't planned around. I'm ending that role too, I said. Matthew's finger lifted from the page. What? I'm resigning as the company's qualifier. Chelsea stared at me. You can't be serious. I am. You'd ruin the first job over one signature. The guarantee showed me what my role means to you. Matthew gathered the papers into his folder. You can't quit with an active customer and an appointment scheduled. I can end at will employment. Not like this. I'll put it in writing. Chelsea's voice dropped. If you leave, don't expect me to chase you. I picked up my folder. I never wanted you to chase me. She looked toward the sideboard. The apple crisp was still there, untouched. I left without eating dessert. At home, I carried my folder into the workshop. I took the employment letter and certification record from the filing cabinet. Then, I set the bank packet details down from memory while they were fresh. I poured one glass of bourbon and left it beside the desk lamp. For the next hour, I read my employment letter, my original conditions, and the state guidance I'd saved when Matthew first approached me. I knew what the documents appeared to say. I wanted to verify the exact permit requirement before I sent anything. I wrote a short list for Monday morning, confirm my certification status, confirm the company's qualifier requirement, confirm who needed notice, deliver written resignation. Then I opened a blank page and typed the date. The permit appointment was 8 business days away. My name was already on the draft application, and Matthew had just told me every plan he'd made depended on leaving it there. Monday morning, I called the state licensing office as soon as it opened. I gave the woman my certification number and asked her to confirm its status. It's active, she said. Your renewal is current. I'm employed by a dwelling contractor. I'm ending that employment. Then you should notify the contractor in writing. Does my certification stay with the company? No. The certification belongs to you. Can the company continue using my number after I leave, not as its employed qualifier? She directed me to the state guidance published online. I already had an older copy, but I downloaded the current version and read it from the beginning. The language was plain enough. Rhodes' home renewal needed an employed qualifier for the residential work Matthew planned to permit. My certification wasn't transferred to his company when I signed the employment letter. It remained mine. The company relied on it only while I remained in that role. I called the Oshkosh permit office next. A clerk answered after a short hold. I'm listed as the qualifier for a contractor with an upcoming appointment, I said. I resigned before any application was submitted. What should I send you? She asked for the company name. Rhodes Home Renewal, I heard her typing. There's an appointment under that name for Wednesday after next. Is there an application on file? Not yet. It looks like a counter appointment only. That was useful. Matthew had prepared the draft, but the city didn't have it. There was still time to make the record clear before anyone relied on the application. The clerk said, if your name may appear on their paperwork, email us a dated copy of your resignation. Include your certification number and the date your employment ended. Will that cancel their appointment? No. They can keep the appointment. They'll need to show they meet the requirements when they apply. So, you're not deciding anything now. Correct. We'll review what they present. Authority wasn't going to settle the family argument. It would only apply the rule at the counter. I thanked her and wrote the permit office email address on my list. Then I finished the resignation. It was 1 page. I stated that my part-time employment with Rhodes Home Renewal ended immediately. I stated that the company no longer had permission to use my name or qualifier number as its employed qualifier after that date. I offered to answer reasonable questions needed to hand over the job information I had already reviewed. I didn't mention the guarantee. I didn't mention dinner. Those things explained my decision, but they weren't required to make it effective. I printed 3 copies and signed each one. 1 went into my filing cabinet, 1 went into an envelope for Matthew. I scanned the 3rd and attached it to 2 emails. The first went to Matthew and the company email address. The second went to the permit office. I copied Chelsea on the message to Matthew because she'd scheduled the appointment and participated in the company discussions. I didn't want either of them claiming the other had failed to pass it along. At 10:16, I clicked send. Matthew called at 10:18. What did you just do? I sent my resignation. You copied the city. Yes. Why would you involve them before talking to me? We talked Friday. You announced something at dinner. That isn't a business discussion. It became a business discussion when you put an $80,000 guarantee beside my plate. He lowered his voice. I'm trying to find a way through this. You can find another qualifier. In 7 business days, the appointment is your deadline, not mine. You agreed to help launch this company. I did help. You can't pull your credential after we sign a customer. My employment is at will. There should be notice. Show me where. You know what I mean. I know what the letter says. He was silent for a few seconds. Stay through the first permit. No. You don't have to sign the bank packet. No. I'm separating the 2 issues. You joined them Friday. That was Chelsea. I looked at the phone. The packet came from your bank. I mean the way she presented it. Did you ask her to get my signature? Another silence. I told her we needed it. Did you know she planned to hand it to me during dinner? I knew she wanted to keep things calm. By hiding it until after I ate? Nothing was hidden. She gave it to you. I stood and walked to the workshop window. A thin line of frost still clung to the bottom edge. Remove my name and number from the draft application. I'm trying to replace you. That wasn't my request. If I remove you now, I have nothing to bring to the appointment. That is exactly why you must remove me. His breathing changed. You copied the permit office to corner me. I copied them because you already put my name on an application you wouldn't send me. It was a draft. Then it should be easy to correct. We can correct it when we have someone else. You correct it now. He ended the call. 5 minutes later, Chelsea called. I let it ring once before answering. You humiliated him, she said. I resigned from a job. You sent it to the city because my number is on the permit application. He said it's a draft. It's still my number. You're treating your own family like strangers. Strangers would have sent the paperwork before asking me to sign. Are you going to keep doing this? Doing what? Turning every conversation into evidence. I asked clear questions. Neither of you answered them. She made a frustrated sound. Matthew's customer already gave him a deposit. I saw the contract. He has people counting on him. Then he needs a company that can perform without my personal credit. You're punishing him because I made one mistake. What mistake? The way I brought out the bank packet. You checked my mail. You arranged a consultant. You told her I was confused about bills. Now you call the guarantee a presentation mistake. I was trying to make things easier. For whom? Her voice became very quiet. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Cold. I sat down at the workshop desk. I'm being direct. No. You're making us pay because you're lonely. The words landed because part of them was true. I had given them things because I was lonely. I had accepted token wages because I wanted a chair at their table. I had treated company calls like family contact. But that didn't make the guarantee safe. It didn't return my mail to the box. It didn't put consent into the consultant's visit. You're right that I've been lonely, I said. She hadn't expected agreement. I continued. That's why I said yes too often. I'm correcting that. So, now you're cutting us off? I didn't say that. You resigned from Matthew's company. That's employment. You told the city. That's my certification. You refuse to help with the loan. That's my credit. Do you hear yourself separating everything? Yes. That isn't family. She didn't answer. I heard a cabinet door close on her end. Finally, she said, Matthew thinks you'll come around if we give you space. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. That's honest. Don't talk to me like I'm a client. I'm talking to you like my daughter. No, you're not. She ended the call. I remained at the desk with the phone in my hand. An email arrived from the permit office before noon. It confirmed receipt of my resignation. The clerk repeated that the company could keep its appointment, but any application would be reviewed based on the company's status at that time. I printed the email and put it behind my copy of the resignation. That was the practical result I needed. The city had notice before the application arrived. It also meant Matthew knew I had acted outside the family conversation. He couldn't keep talking as if Friday had been an emotional misunderstanding that would disappear after a few days. At 1, I drove to Hazel Street to deliver the paper copy. Chelsea's car wasn't there. Matthew's truck was parked in the driveway. He opened the door but didn't invite me inside. I already have the email. I'm giving you a signed copy. He looked at the envelope without taking it. You could leave it in the mailbox. I don't put business documents in someone else's mailbox. Now you care about mail rules? Yes. His mouth tightened. He took the envelope. I talked to 2 people this morning. Certified qualifiers. One may know someone. Good. Don't act pleased. I want the customer protected. If you wanted that, you'd stay through the permit. I'll answer questions about the plans I reviewed. I won't be listed as your qualifier. That distinction means everything to you now. It should mean everything to you too. He glanced toward the street. What would it take? To do what? Stay employed for 30 days. No guarantee. Market pay. We put everything in writing? I thought about it. A week earlier, the offer might have sounded reasonable. That morning, I'd verified the rule, notified the city, and made the separation clear. If I returned immediately, they would learn that enough pressure could restore my name to the application. No. Then this isn't about protection, it's personal. It became personal when you treated my certification as something you'd already secured. I built plans around your commitment. You built beyond what I agreed to. We have 7 business days. You've known since Friday. This is Monday. Then you have 7 left after today. He looked down at the envelope. You really counted them. The appointment matters. He stepped back and closed the door. I returned to my truck. Before I started it, I sent him one final email. Please confirm in writing that my name and qualifier number have been removed from every current draft. No answer came. By that evening, Chelsea had removed me from a family message thread we used for holidays and dinners. There were only 3 people in it. My phone displayed a plain notice saying I'd left, though I hadn't touched anything. I called her once. She didn't answer. I didn't call again. Instead, I went into the workshop and finished the cabinet doors I'd neglected all week. I sanded the edges, wiped away the dust, and brushed on the final coat. The work steadied my hands. At 9, Matthew replied to my email. We acknowledge your resignation. We're handling the qualifier issue. He still didn't confirm that he'd removed my name. I printed that message too. The next morning, I called the permit office with one new objective. I asked whether I could be notified if an application arrived bearing my certification number. The clerk said they couldn't promise advance notice. Applications were handled at the scheduled counter appointment. If your credential appears, she said, your employment status will be confirmed at the counter. I wrote those words beneath the appointment date. Matthew had 6 business days to replace me. If he didn't, the first time anyone tested his draft application would be in public, with the customer's schedule already waiting behind it. I circled the sentence and closed the notebook. For the next 2 days, no one called. I kept busy. I delivered the cabinet doors, replaced a worn belt on my sander, and cleaned the gutters before the next freeze. I used the ladder, but I tied it off and kept my phone in my pocket. On Wednesday evening, Chelsea sent one message. We need to come by, I answered. What about your recent decisions? That doesn't tell me much. We'll be there at 7. I nearly told her not to come. Then I thought about the consultant and the way she had arranged that meeting without giving me the purpose. If Chelsea wanted to say something, I wanted her to say it directly. I replied, You can come. I'm not signing anything. She didn't answer. They arrived together. Matthew carried a document envelope. Chelsea held her purse against her chest. I let them into the kitchen. Coffee? I asked. No, Chelsea said. Matthew shook his head. I sat in my usual chair. They sat across from me, with Meredith's empty place between them. Matthew placed the envelope on the table. Chelsea said, We're worried. About what? The way you've been acting, be specific. You cut off access to your mail. You embarrassed me in front of Linda. You quit the company without notice. You contacted the city behind our backs. I notified the city that I resigned. You're doing it again. What? Making everything sound reasonable by changing the words. I looked at Matthew. Is that why you're here? We need to discuss whether something else is affecting your judgment, such as? He glanced at Chelsea. She opened the envelope and removed a stack of printed pages. The top page had a county heading. Below it were the words, Petition for Guardianship, due to incompetency. For a moment, I didn't touch it. Are you filing this? Chelsea's fingers tightened around the pages. We haven't decided. Is it filled out? Partly. Let me see it. She hesitated, then slid it across the table. My name was typed near the top. So was my address. The form asked why the person named in the petition might be unable to manage property or personal decisions. Chelsea had attached a separate page. I read the first line. Progressive financial confusion following spouse's death. I looked up. What progressive confusion? You've changed, she said. Everyone changes when a spouse dies. You give money away. To you, not only us. Name someone else. She looked at Matthew. He said, This isn't an interrogation. You brought a competency petition into my kitchen. Chelsea reached for the paper. I held it flat. I'm reading it. The next item described social isolation and unsafe home maintenance. Then it mentioned missed appointments, unexplained payments, resistance to assistance, and sudden decisions affecting family finances. Which family finances? I asked. The company, Matthew said. The company isn't my family finances. It affected our household. That doesn't make it mine. You knew what we had invested. No, every time I asked, you said you were handling it. Chelsea said, He means our savings. I looked at her. What happened to your savings? We moved some money into the business. When? After Friday. How much? That isn't your concern. You just put it in a paper about my judgment. Matthew leaned forward. We had to cover commitments because you withdrew. You moved the household money after I refused the guarantee. We moved enough to keep things going. Did the bank line fund? No. Did you tell the customer your financing changed? The job isn't canceled. That wasn't an answer. Chelsea pulled the attachment toward her. You see what you're doing? You're focused on technical details while your daughter is telling you she's scared. I'm focused on facts because this paper asks a court to take decisions away from me. We haven't filed it. Why did you fill it out? To understand our options. What option do you want? She pressed both palms against the table. I want my father back. I'm sitting here. No? The man sitting here keeps records of our calls. He sends formal letters. He copies government offices. He refuses to trust anyone. I trusted you with my mail. You read my balances without asking. To help you. You told Linda I missed payments. I thought you did. You had the statements. I didn't study every line. So you knew enough to worry, but not enough to check. Matthew moved his chair back slightly. Can we keep this productive? I pointed to the petition. Did you prepare this? Chelsea downloaded it. Did you help write the attachment? We discussed the concerns. Did you tell her my resignation showed bad judgment? It was abrupt. Did you tell her the employment was at will? That doesn't mean it was responsible. Did you include the personal guarantee? He looked away. I searched the attachment. The guarantee wasn't mentioned. Neither was the fact that my name had been placed on the draft permit application before I reviewed the plans. You described me leaving the company, I said. You left out what you asked me to sign. Chelsea's face hardened. The bank packet has nothing to do with whether you're okay. It happened during the same dinner. You were already suspicious before that. I asked you to stop taking my mail. You rented a post office box without telling me. Why would I need to tell you? Because normal people don't hide their mail from their daughter. I looked at the petition again. My date of birth was wrong. They had put 1958. I was born in 1958. Chelsea leaned over the table. What? The year is wrong? That's a typing mistake. You're asking whether I know what I'm doing, and you wrote my birth year wrong. That proves nothing. No, it doesn't. Neither does most of this page. I read the remainder carefully. There were no medical findings. Linda's name didn't appear. There was no doctor listed. The form had blank spaces where supporting information would go. It was not a completed court filing. It was a thread arranged to look farther along than it was. That distinction helped, but not as much as I wanted it to. The person holding the pages was still my daughter. "What happens if I don't do what you want?" I asked. Chelsea spoke slowly. "We want you to see a doctor." "For what?" "An evaluation. And then, if the doctor says everything is fine, we'll know." "What else?" Matthew said, "We need a reasonable transition for the company." There it was. I looked at him. "What does my medical appointment have to do with your qualifier? If you're making decisions out of anger or grief, we shouldn't destroy a business because of them. So if a doctor says I can manage myself, you'll accept the resignation?" He rubbed his jaw. "We'll discuss the best way forward. That means no." Chelsea raised her voice. "Stop putting words in his mouth. Then answer for yourself. If a doctor says I'm competent, do you accept that I can resign?" She looked down at Meredith's place. "I'd still think you were wrong. Wrong is allowed." She looked at me again. "You're willing to let us lose everything to prove a point. What is everything? Our savings. The customer. Matthew's company. You chose to move more money after I resigned because you gave us no time. You had 8 business days before the appointment and no funded line." "We had you," she said. The words came out hard and fast. Then she seemed to hear them. "I did too. Not my advice. Not my help. Not even my experience. They had me. My certification, my credit, my time, and whatever money I might offer once the pressure became uncomfortable enough." I pushed the petition back toward her. "You don't need a guardian for me. You need a guarantor for Matthew." "That is disgusting," she said. "It's what this paper leaves out. You think I'd have you declared incompetent over a business loan? I think you brought the form here after I refused one." She stood so quickly that her chair struck the wall. "Mom would not recognize you." I remained seated. "Your mother knew I could say no." "Not to me." The sentence stayed between us. Chelsea's face changed. Her anger didn't disappear, but something uncertain entered it. Matthew stood and collected the pages. "We're done. Leave me a copy." "No," he said. "It has my information on it. It isn't filed." "Then there's no reason I can't keep a copy." Chelsea took the stack from him. She removed the attachment and handed it to me. "Keep it," she said. "Maybe you'll read it when you're calmer." "I'm calm now. That's what scares me." They left through the kitchen door. Matthew carried the official form. I kept the page they had written. The concrete cost arrived after their car pulled away. Chelsea blocked my number. I knew because I called once. The call went directly to voicemail. My message didn't show as delivered. I tried again the next morning, not because I had anything new to say, but because I wanted the first attempt to have been a phone problem. The result was the same. Matthew emailed before noon. All future communication should concern final company transition only. I read the line several times. The family connection I'd spent years purchasing with labor and money had narrowed to a company exit. Once I stopped providing what they wanted, even my daughter's phone became unavailable. I went into the kitchen and opened the drawer where Meredith kept recipe cards. Her apple crisp recipe was near the front. She had written Chelsea's name in the top corner because Chelsea once asked for a copy. There was a cinnamon stain across the bottom. I put it back. Then I noticed the bowl of cabinet knobs on the counter. I'd brought them inside after deciding not to take them to Hazel Street. They were still waiting for a reason that no longer existed. I carried them to the workshop and returned them to the hardware shelf. That afternoon, I copied the handwritten attachment and placed the original in my filing cabinet. I made a separate page listing the facts behind each claim. No missed payments. 1 rescheduled dental cleaning. No recent falls. Voluntary gifts documented. Consultant visit conducted without prior informed agreement. I stopped after that line. My first objective had been to get my mail back and keep my certification off Matthew's application. Part of me had also wanted Chelsea to admit I was right. I had imagined that if I explained the guarantee clearly enough, she'd understand why I refused. The petition changed that. I no longer needed her agreement before protecting myself. I needed every decision to remain mine, even if she hated it. That also meant I couldn't use the resignation to force an apology. If Matthew found another qualifier, I would let him. If the business continued, I wouldn't interfere. My boundary had to remain a boundary even when it stopped giving me any influence. I opened my work log and added the time I'd spent preparing the transition documents. Then I emailed Matthew. I'll provide factual information about work already reviewed. I will not resume employment, lend my certification, or guarantee the bank line. Do not connect those decisions to any medical claim. Please identify the person receiving the job files. His answer came late that evening. No replacement yet. We expect to resolve it before the appointment. The appointment was now 4 business days away. For the first time, my goal wasn't to make them see what they were doing. It was to make sure they couldn't succeed by waiting for me to become lonely enough to surrender. The next morning, I stopped waiting for Matthew to tell me what he planned. I made 3 lists. The first covered company work I had already reviewed. The second covered every document I knew carried my name or qualifier number. The third covered anything still unclear. The first list was easy. I had the West Side kitchen pictures, the structural questions, trailer notes, and several smaller estimates. The second list had only 2 confirmed items, my employment letter and Matthew's draft permit application. The third list was longer. Had the bank used my name only in the unsigned packet? Had Matthew shown my certification to the first customer? Had he put my number on any other draft? Did the city appointment still identify me as the company's qualifier? I could answer some of those questions without asking Matthew. I called the bank whose logo had been on the packet. I explained that I'd received an unsigned personal guarantee for Rhodes' home renewal. I'm not asking for account information, I said. I'm notifying you that I declined to sign. The employee transferred me to the business lending department. A man there asked for my full name, the company name, and my address. Then he asked whether I had signed any application or electronic authorization. No. Did you provide financial statements? No. Did you authorize the company to sign on your behalf? No. He couldn't discuss the borrower's file, but he could record my statement. Will money be released based on the unsigned guarantee? I asked. No guarantee is effective without execution and bank acceptance. Please note that I won't be executing it. I can do that. Will the borrower be informed? If your participation is a condition of the credit request, the lending officer may contact the borrower. That was fine. I wasn't trying to surprise Matthew. I was making sure the pending line couldn't drift forward under the assumption that family pressure would eventually produce my signature. The man gave me a reference number for the call. I wrote it in my notebook. Then I drove to the permit office. The municipal building had wet footprints across the lobby. A snow shovel leaned beside the entrance. At the counter, I gave the clerk a paper copy of my resignation and the email confirmation I'd received. She found the appointment on her screen. Rhodes' home renewal, Wednesday morning. Yes. She looked at the resignation. You already emailed this. I want to know it's attached to the appointment. She scanned the page and typed a note. It is now. What happens if they bring an application with my number? We ask whether you're currently employed as the company's qualifier. If they say yes, we verify. How? That depends on what they present. Your resignation is in the file. I watched her turn the document sideways and stamp the top corner with the received date. Can I have a stamped copy? She stamped my copy too. That was my visible result. My resignation no longer existed only in family email. It sat with the appointment record before Matthew submitted anything. I placed the stamped copy in my folder. Am I allowed to attend the appointment? It's a public counter. Even if I'm not applying, you can be present. We may ask you a question if your credential appears. I thanked her and stepped away so the next person could approach. In the parking lot, I wrote one sentence beneath the appointment date. Attend if Matthew does not confirm removal. Then I called him. He didn't answer, so I left a message. I've completed the transition file. I'll deliver it today. I also confirm my resignation is attached to the permit appointment. If you plan to use a different qualifier, send me that person's name so I can direct the job notes correctly. I didn't ask him to call me back. I didn't explain why I was hurt. I gave him the information and the next action. At home, I assembled the transition package. I printed the kitchen review, the list of unresolved structural questions, and the notes from every company call I could identify. I included the hours I'd worked and marked them paid or unpaid. The unpaid total wasn't large enough to threaten anyone. It was large enough to show how often family favors had become company labor. I didn't send a bill. The token wage had been part of my own bad decision. I wasn't going to turn it into a second fight. At the top of the package, I put a one-page memo. Information provided for continuity only. It does not authorize use of my name, certification, or employment status. I signed and dated it. Then I drove to Hazel Street, No cars were in the driveway. I didn't have a key, and I didn't try the door. I called Matthew once. When he didn't answer, I took the package home rather than leave it outside. 20 minutes later, he called. You went to the permit office? Yes. They contacted me. What did they say? That my appointment has a credential issue attached. It has my resignation attached. You made it look like we're trying to do something improper. I gave them an accurate employment record. You could have let me replace you quietly. I still can. No? Now they'll scrutinize everything. They were already going to review the application. That's not the same. What's different? They know there's a dispute. There's no dispute about whether I resigned. You know how this looks. I set the transition package on the passenger seat. Do you have a replacement? I'm working on it. Who receives the files? I do. When can I deliver them? Tomorrow. I'm outside your house now. I'm not there. I know. He sighed. Leave them with Chelsea later. I'll hand them to you or send them electronically. You don't trust her with papers now? This is company work. You told me all communication should concern transition. He was quiet. Come by at 5. I'll be there. Before he ended the call, I said, I'll attend the permit appointment if I don't receive written confirmation that my name is off the application. You're not needed. My number is on the draft I saw. I said, I'm handling it. That isn't confirmation. You want to stand there and watch me fail? No. I want to hear the answer if anyone asks whether I'm employed. He hung up. At 5, he met me on the front porch. Chelsea's car was behind his truck, but she didn't come to the door. I handed him the package. He opened it and read the top page. What is this wording? It says the notes don't restore my employment. I know what it says. Then we agree. He flipped through the job records. You logged every call? Once I separated company work from family help. This makes it look like we didn't pay you. You paid the hours I submitted. You didn't submit most of these. That's why I'm not billing you for them. He looked at me. Then why include them? So the next qualifier knows what work was done. You think another qualifier needs to know you spent 20 minutes looking at trailer pictures? I think the company needs a complete file. He stopped at the West Side kitchen notes. This customer isn't active. The questions still belong to the company. He closed the package. Fine. Sign that you received it. His head came up. You brought a receipt? Yes. I handed him a second page. It listed the contents. Beneath the list was a simple line for date and signature. I'm not signing some release. It isn't a release. You're documenting me again. I'm transferring company information. I need proof you received it. He read the page twice. Then he took a pen from his pocket and signed. I signed beneath him and tore off his copy. That was another practical result. He could no longer say I'd abandoned the work or withheld the files. Chelsea opened the front door while we were finishing. Are you done? She asked Matthew. Almost. She looked at me, but didn't say hello. I held out a small envelope. This is for you. She didn't take it. What is it? A note. About what? Us, not the company. Matthew looked between us. Chelsea said, You can email me. You blocked me. I needed space. That's why I wrote it. She took the envelope with 2 fingers. I had kept the note short. I want contact with you. I won't discuss returning to the company, lending my certification, or signing the guarantee. If you want dinner or coffee without those subjects, ask me directly. She opened it while I stood there. Her eyes moved across the lines. That's an ultimatum. No, it's an invitation with limits. You don't get to decide what we're allowed to talk about. You can talk about anything. I can leave. Matthew stepped toward the door. This isn't the time. Chelsea folded the note. When is the time, Dad? After you ruin the appointment? I'm not controlling the appointment. You attached a warning to it. I attached my resignation. Same thing. I walked to my truck. She called after me. Are you really going to show up? If my name is still on the application, that's Matthew's business. My name isn't. I drove home before they could turn the porch into another meeting. The bank called Matthew that evening. I knew because he sent me an email with the subject line, unnecessary interference. The message said the lender had marked the guarantee condition declined and placed the credit request on hold. He accused me of contacting institutions to damage the company. I replied with one sentence. I notified the bank that I did not sign and would not sign. He answered immediately. You've made yourself the target of every problem we have now. I didn't respond. The strategy had worked. The bank no longer waited for my signature. The city had my resignation. And Matthew had received every job file. Nothing was hidden. That also meant he knew exactly what I had protected and where I planned to be if he used my name. 3 business days remained before the permit appointment. At 9 that night, Chelsea unblocked my number and sent a message. Family meeting tomorrow at 6. Your house. We're settling this before Wednesday. I answered, you can come. I won't sign anything. Chelsea replied, just listen. The next evening, I cleared the kitchen table before 6. I left my notebook in the workshop. If they wanted a family conversation, I would start without a file between us. They arrived on time. Matthew carried his business folder. Chelsea had the same document envelope she'd brought before. I opened the door. You said family meeting, I said. Why is the business folder here? Because the business is the reason we need the meeting, Matthew replied. Chelsea walked past me into the kitchen. We're not doing this on the porch. I closed the door and followed them. They sat together on one side of the table. I sat across from them. Matthew opened his folder. I'm going to lay out where things stand. Then you can decide what you want to do. I've already decided. You don't know everything? Go ahead. He took out the customer contract and placed it in front of him. The bank line is on hold. We can't draw anything unless the guarantee condition is replaced. I know. The 2 people I contacted about serving as qualifier aren't available. Did you offer market pay? One wanted more than the first job can support. That wasn't my question. Yes, I offered market pay. That was new. Matthew had finally put a real price on the role he'd treated as a family favor. He continued, the other person can't change employers right now. I have one more lead, but not before Wednesday. Then move the appointment. We'll lose the start date. Tell the customer. I already told him there may be a delay. What did you tell him about me? Matthew glanced at Chelsea. I said our original qualifier had a sudden personal issue. What personal issue? I didn't give details. You made it sound medical. I said personal. You could have said I resigned. That would make the company look unstable. So, you made me look unstable instead. Chelsea said, that isn't what he meant. I looked at her. Did you know what he told the customer? Yes. Did you correct it? No, because technically this is personal. My employment ended because you asked for my credit. You keep going back to that. It happened. Matthew touched the contract. The customer asked whether you were reliable when we hired you. I sat back. Why? Because he found your certification online and saw you'd been active for years. Then I had to explain why you disappeared after the contract was signed. You didn't hire me after the contract. No, but that's how it looks to him. How it looks depends on what you say. He's worried the company can't finish. That's a fair concern. Chelsea stared at me. You sound pleased. I'm not. You don't look upset. I am sitting at my kitchen table. That's what I mean. Nothing reaches you anymore. I folded my hands. What else don't I know? She opened the document envelope but didn't remove the petition. Instead, she took out a bank transfer confirmation and turned it toward me. The amount was covered by her thumb. I moved most of our emergency savings into the business account, she said. I looked at Matthew. He said, that was our decision, Chelsea corrected him. It was my decision. When, I asked. Monday morning. After I resigned. Yes. Why? Because we needed to show the bank and the customer that we could keep moving. Did the bank ask you to do that? No. Did Matthew? He told me what the business needed. I made the transfer. Matthew said, we're married. Stop trying to separate us. I'm asking who decided. I did, Chelsea repeated. If you need someone to blame, blame me. What is the money committed to? Insurance, equipment deposits, materials, payroll reserve. Can any of it be recovered? Some. How much? Matthew pulled the transfer page back. We didn't come for a financial review. You showed me the transfer. We showed you what your decision is costing your daughter. I looked at Chelsea. My resignation happened first. You moved the money afterward. Because I believed you wouldn't let us fail. You were counting on me changing my mind. I was counting on you loving me. There was no useful answer to that sentence. If I said I loved her, she would point to the company. If I talked about the company, she would point to love. Matthew removed another paper from his folder. This solves the immediate problem. He placed it in front of me. It was a new employment letter. The wage was several times what the first letter offered. The employment would begin immediately and continue until Rhodes Home Renewal hired another qualified employee. It said, I would cooperate with the current permit application and provide reasonable transition support. No guarantee, Matthew said. No loan obligation, market pay. How long until you hire someone? As soon as possible. That isn't a date. I can't force a person to become available. Then this is open-ended. It ends when we replace you, so I'm trapped until you complete something you couldn't complete this week. You can resign later. I already resigned. Chelsea pushed the letter closer. Just get him through the appointment. I read the paragraph about the current permit. If the company gets the permit with me as qualifier, who reviews the work? You would, Matthew said. For the full project? Until we replace you? And if that takes 3 months? It won't. If it does, we'll pay you. The pay isn't the point. It was the point when you logged all those unpaid hours. I logged them to transfer the file. You wanted us to see how much you'd done. Yes. And now I'm offering to pay properly. I looked at the customer contract. Does the job include the structural opening? Yes. Is the engineering complete? Not yet. Then even if I returned, I wouldn't approve the application Wednesday without it. We expect the engineering Monday. Expect from whom? A local engineer. Has that person accepted the work? Matthew hesitated. We have a call scheduled, so you're asking me to resume employment for an application that still lacks structural information. The counter-appointment starts the process. We can supplement. Maybe. But my answer is still no. Chelsea took the letter and held it with both hands. You said you wanted us to ask directly. I did. I'm asking directly. Please help us through this first job. I'll help transfer what I know. I won't provide the certification. That isn't help. It's the help I'm offering. She dropped the letter onto the table. Then your note was a trick. It said exactly what I wouldn't discuss. You knew we couldn't have dinner and pretend none of this was happening. I wasn't asking you to pretend. I was asking whether we had a relationship without a task. This is our life, Dad. It isn't a task. The company is Matthew's work. It's our savings now. That was your choice. Her chair scraped backward. Yes, it was. I believed in my husband. I'm not criticizing you for believing in him. You're making sure belief costs me. I'm refusing to make it cost me too. She stood beside the table. What if we lose the deposit? You return it. What if we can't? You just said some of the money can be recovered. What if the customer tells everyone Matthew couldn't start? Then Matthew explains that the company launched before it had enough reserve and a stable qualifier. Matthew's face darkened. You've wanted to say that all along. I asked about reserve the day you brought the employment letter to my workshop. You agreed anyway. Yes, I did. That stopped him for a moment. I continued. I agreed because I wanted to be included. I accepted pay that didn't match the work. I let company questions become family time. That part belongs to me. Chelsea looked at me, but she didn't soften. And now I'm done doing that. She reached into the envelope and removed the competency petition. This gets filed Monday. Matthew turned to her. Chelsea, no, he needs to understand. She laid the form over the new employment letter. I spoke to the county office. They told me filing starts a review. You'll have a chance to respond. Did you tell them there are no medical findings? I told them I'm concerned. Did you tell them about the guarantee? This isn't about the guarantee. It's under the employment letter on my table. She pulled the petition free. If you agree to an evaluation and stop interfering with the appointment, I won't file. There was the choice. Not competence against incompetence. Not family concern against stubborn pride. She wanted my autonomy treated as negotiable while Matthew's deadline ran out. I stood and went to the workshop. I returned with the attachment Chelsea had given me and my stamped resignation. I placed both on the table. This is what you wrote. This is what I did. If you file the petition, I'll respond with the facts. Chelsea's eyes went to the stamp. You went there in person. Yes. You're planning to show up Wednesday. If my name isn't removed. Matthew stood. You won't get near our paperwork. It's a public counter. If you use another qualifier, I'll listen and leave. And if I use you, I'll answer when the clerk asks whether I'm employed. Chelsea put the petition back into its envelope. Then you're choosing this over me. No, you're asking me to choose whether my no counts. Same thing. It shouldn't be. She picked up her purse. You won't hear from me after Wednesday. I wanted to ask whether she meant it. I wanted to remind her of birthdays, Christmas mornings, and the blue serving bowl. I wanted to promise something smaller and keep enough of the old arrangement alive to make the room less empty. Instead, I said, I understand the price you're naming. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. You always have to sound so reasonable. Matthew collected the contract and employment letter. At the door, he turned back. If we lose the customer, that's on you. No, my resignation is on me. The contract is on you. They left. The next morning, Chelsea emailed a copy of the completed petition attachment. She had added my refusal to resume employment as another example of impaired judgment. She had also added the bank call and my planned attendance at the permit counter. I saved it. Then I sent Matthew one final transition message. I remain available to answer questions about prior job notes. My resignation stands. I will attend Wednesday unless I receive the corrected application showing another employed qualifier. He replied, "Do what you think you have to do." I marked the appointment time on my calendar and accepted what it might cost. My daughter might file the petition. The customer might blame me. Their savings might remain tied up. Matthew might tell anyone who listened that I had destroyed his launch. I would still be at the counter Wednesday morning. On Monday morning, Matthew sent a photograph of the new employment letter. "Offer stays open until noon," I replied. My resignation remains effective. At 12:15 he called. "You didn't even make a counteroffer. I'm not negotiating the wage. Everybody negotiates, not when the answer is no. You said you'd help with the transition. I transferred the files. I'll answer questions about them. I need you to explain the structural notes at the counter. An employed qualifier needs to do that. You know more about the job than anyone. Then postpone the appointment and hire someone I can brief." He made a short, angry sound. "You want me to walk into the bank and tell them we lost the customer? The bank line is already on hold because you called them, because I declined the guarantee. Same result, not the same action." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The city told me you attached a resignation to the appointment. They didn't say the appointment was canceled. It isn't. So there's room to handle this. With another employed qualifier, that is your interpretation. No, that's the rule. You're not a lawyer. I don't need to be. What if I tell the clerk your employment status is under dispute? It isn't under dispute. I haven't accepted the resignation. The sentence stopped me. Matthew, the employment letter says it will. That doesn't mean you can damage the company without a reasonable handoff. I gave you a complete handoff. You gave me a pile of notes and a receipt, which you signed. You're proving my point." "What point?" "That you planned all of this." "I planned it after dinner." "Exactly." He said the word like it exposed something. I looked at my copy of the employment letter. "Are you planning to tell the permit clerk I still work for you?" "I'm planning to present the company's position." "Does the application still have my name?" "You'll see Wednesday." He ended the call. That removed any reason for me to stay home. It also created one uncertainty I wanted settled before I stood at a public counter. Matthew was claiming that he needed to accept my resignation. I didn't believe him, but belief wasn't enough. I read the employment letter again. The line said, "Employment is at will and may be terminated by either party at any time." I had delivered written notice. Matthew had acknowledged it in email. He had signed for the transition files. The city had received a copy. Still, I called the state licensing office. I explained the situation without giving Chelsea's name or discussing the loan. The contractor says my resignation isn't effective because it wasn't accepted. The woman on the line said, "We don't decide private employment disputes." I understand. For licensing purposes, can a contractor list someone as its employed qualifier after that person has stated in writing that the employment ended, not if the person is no longer employed? What if the contractor says otherwise? The permit authority may ask for evidence of current employment. You can provide evidence of termination. Does the contractor own any part of my individual certification? No. Does my resignation cancel my certification? No. Your individual certification remains active. That removed the uncertainty that mattered. My leverage wasn't the bank call, the consultant meeting, or the unfinished petition. None of those would decide whether Matthew met the permit requirement. The deciding fact was simple. I no longer worked for Rhodes Home Renewal. I asked whether the woman could direct me to the exact published language. She gave me the section heading. I printed that page and highlighted one sentence about the company employing a qualified individual. Then I called the permit office. I didn't ask them to reject anything. I said, "The contractor may claim tomorrow that my resignation required acceptance. Will the counter decide that dispute?" The clerk answered carefully, "We won't rule on employment law. We will ask whether the company currently employs a certified qualifier. I will answer no. You may provide your documentation." What should I bring? Your employment letter, resignation, and proof it was delivered should be enough for us to understand your position. Do you need the bank paperwork? No. Anything about the family disagreement? No. That helped more than she knew. I had been building a folder broad enough to defend every accusation. The clerk only needed the narrow facts tied to the permit. I removed Chelsea's petition attachment. I removed the bank call reference. I removed my paid bills, work log, and notes from the consultant visit. None of those belonged at a permit counter. I kept 4 things: my certification record, the at-will employment letter, my dated resignation, Matthew's written acknowledgement and signed receipt for the transition package. The published state guidance went behind them. I made 1 extra copy of each page in case the clerk needed to retain something. Then I closed the folder. Chelsea called that afternoon. Her number appeared normally this time. I answered. "Hi. Did Matthew talk to you?" "Yes. He says you're still coming tomorrow." "Yes. You got what you wanted. The bank isn't funding. Why do you need to be there?" "Because he won't tell me whether my name is off the application. He says the application is company business. My certification isn't. You keep repeating that." "Because it hasn't changed." She breathed into the phone without speaking. I waited. Finally, she said, "I didn't file the petition this morning." "All right. Is that all you're going to say?" "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand that I stopped." "Why?" "Because I don't want to do it." "That's a good reason. I could still file." "Yes, you could stop this too. By staying home, by giving Matthew 1 day. 1 day is what? His qualifier. I don't work for the company. You could say you do for the appointment. That would be false. It would give him time. It would put my certification behind an application I haven't approved. You read the draft, I read part of it. The engineering wasn't complete. He got the engineering. Has a current qualifier reviewed it? You're the person who knows how to review it. I'm not employed. She raised her voice. Then stop hiding behind that word. It's the word the rule uses. This isn't about a word. It's about whether you're willing to watch your daughter lose her savings. I didn't ask you to move the money. You knew I would do anything to support him. No. I didn't know you would move it after I resigned. He's my husband. I know. Mom supported you. Your mother also knew what our accounts could carry. Don't make this about whether I'm as smart as Mom. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I stood at the workshop bench and looked at the closed folder. Chelsea, listen to me. I'm not contacting the customer. I'm not discussing the bank at the permit office. I'm not bringing the petition. I will answer one question if they ask it. Which question? Whether I'm employed by Rhodes Home Renewal. And you'll say no. Yes. That one word ruins everything. No. It tells the truth about one requirement. You know what happens after. The application may be rejected. The customer walks. That's the customer's choice. We return the deposit. Yes. Matthew's reputation is destroyed. He postpones his first job. That isn't the same as destroying his reputation. You don't know what people will say. I can't control that. You can control what you say. That's why I'm only answering the employment question. Her voice became quiet again. You could call the customer right now and warn him. I could. Why haven't you? Because I'm not trying to take the customer away. So, there's some line you won't cross, yes. But you'll cross this one. I'm standing on my side of it. She let out a tired breath. If you go tomorrow, something between us changes permanently. It already has. That isn't an answer. Yes, it is. She waited. I could hear a television somewhere behind her. Matthew said something, but I couldn't make out the words. Chelsea asked, "Do you still want me to call you after?" "Yes. Even if I file?" "Yes. Even if I tell people what you did?" "I want you to call because you're my daughter. I won't trade the answer for my certification." You make it sound like I'm selling something. I'm saying the two things are separate. They're separate to you. They have to be. She ended the call without saying goodbye. An hour later, Matthew emailed a calendar update. The appointment was still active. The description no longer mentioned my name, but he still hadn't sent a corrected application or identified another qualifier. I could have forwarded the petition attachment to the bank. It would have shown the pressure surrounding the guarantee. I could have sent it to the customer with my resignation. That might have ended the job before Wednesday and spared me the public confrontation. It also would have exposed Chelsea's worst decision to strangers who didn't need to see it. I deleted the customer's address from my notes. I left the bank reference in the filing cabinet. I returned the petition attachment to its folder. The permit issue could stand on its own. Tuesday evening, I ate scrambled eggs and toast. I washed the plate, wiped the counter, and checked the folder once more. Meredith used to put anything we needed in the morning directly in front of the kitchen door. She said a person could forget a note but couldn't walk through a toolbox. I set the folder against my shoes. Before bed, I checked the weather. Light snow was expected before sunrise. I set the alarm 20 minutes earlier than usual. At 6:30 the next morning, the driveway had a thin white cover. I shoveled the walk, brushed off the truck, and made coffee in a travel mug. I wore clean work pants and a dark buttoned shirt, not a suit. I wasn't appearing before a judge. I was going to a permit counter where I had stood many times during my working life. I put the folder on the passenger seat. The customer might be there, other contractors might hear. Chelsea might never forgive me for answering in front of them. I had removed every paper that could turn the moment into revenge. What remained was the one fact Matthew couldn't borrow, renew, or pressure into existence. I locked the house and drove toward the municipal building. The municipal lot had been plowed, but a thin layer of snow covered the painted lines. I parked near the side entrance and carried my folder under my coat. Inside, the lobby smelled like wet boots and floor cleaner. A television mounted near the ceiling showed the weather without sound. 3 people sat in molded plastic chairs with plan tubes or folders on their laps. I checked the time. I was 12 minutes early. Matthew and Chelsea arrived together. He carried the business folder and a rolled set of plans. Chelsea carried nothing. She saw me first. "You actually came. I said I would." Matthew brushed snow from his coat. "You don't need to be here. Did you remove my name?" He looked toward the counter. "We're handling it." That still isn't an answer. Chelsea stepped between us. "Please don't start in the lobby. I asked one question." Matthew said, "You can watch if that makes you feel better. Don't interrupt. If my name isn't used, I won't." He gave me a hard look. "Stay away from the counter until they ask for you. It's a public counter." "Dad," Chelsea said, "just let him get through the appointment." I looked at her. "Did he tell you who the new qualifier is?" She glanced at Matthew. "He said he had a plan." "That isn't what I asked." Matthew walked toward the chairs. "We're not doing this now." Chelsea followed him. I sat several seats away. For the next few minutes, Matthew reviewed his paperwork. He checked the application, moved one page behind another, and placed several small flags along the plan set. Chelsea leaned close to him. "Is the engineering in there?" "Yes." "Did the other person sign?" "I told you I'm handling it." She looked toward me. I was too far away to hear anything else they said. A contractor at the counter discussed a detached garage with the clerk. She asked about setbacks, marked a dimension on his site plan, and sent him to another window to pay a fee. No one raised a voice. No one cared about the 3 members of one family sitting apart. That helped. The appointment before Matthews ran long. A woman had brought an old plan set with several pages missing. The clerk explained what she needed to add. The woman wrote everything on a yellow pad. Matthew kept checking the wall clock. At 9 minutes past his appointment time, the clerk called, "Roads home renewal." Matthew stood immediately. Chelsea stood with him. I remained seated. He unrolled the plans on the counter. Chelsea stayed at his right shoulder. The clerk recognized the company name from the appointment record. She also recognized me, though she didn't say anything yet. Matthew began with the customer contract. "This is our first phase," he said. "Main floor interior remodel. Kitchen, flooring, bathroom updates, and 1 structural opening." The clerk reviewed the scope. "Address?" Matthew gave it to her. She found the parcel on her screen and checked the application. "Property owner's signature is here. Contractor information is here." She turned to the plan set. Matthew showed her the existing floor plan, proposed layout, and the structural detail he had obtained Monday. I couldn't see the engineer's name from where I sat. I didn't need to. The clerk asked about electrical and plumbing work. "Licensed subcontractors," Matthew said. "We're finalizing those." She made a note. "Those permits will be separate." "Understood." He sounded prepared. If I hadn't known what was inside the application, I might have been proud of him. The clerk continued through the checklist. Chelsea relaxed slightly. She put one hand against the edge of the counter and looked at the plans. Then the clerk turned the application back toward Matthew. "Dwelling contractor credential?" He handed her a printed record. "Qualifier." Matthew tapped the application. Listed there. Chelsea looked down. Her body became still. She read the line and then looked at him. "That's Dad." Matthew kept his eyes on the clerk. "Yes." "You said you handled it." "I am handling it." "You left his name on there?" He spoke through his teeth. "Not now." Chelsea stepped closer to the application. I could see the moment she understood. Until then, she had known Matthew wanted me to return. She had known he hadn't named a replacement, but she hadn't known he intended to present the same draft with my name still on it after receiving my resignation. She looked back at me. I didn't move. The clerk opened the appointment note on her screen. Mr. Rhodes, we have noticed that James Horton resigned as the company's qualifier. Matthew had reached the point where he could still withdraw the application. He could have said he needed to reschedule. He could have admitted he didn't have a current qualifier. Instead, he placed both hands on the counter. There's an employment disagreement, he said. James is still our qualifier of record. The clerk looked at the application. Is he currently employed by the company? He was hired as our qualifier. We have an active customer that he reviewed. That doesn't answer the question. He resigned without reasonable notice after we relied on his commitment. Chelsea whispered, Matthew. He ignored her. The clerk asked, Do you have a current employment letter? Matthew took out the new letter he had offered at the family meeting. It didn't have my signature. The clerk looked at it. This isn't executed. It reflects the terms we offered. Did Mr. Horton accept? He's here. The clerk looked past him toward me. Matthew turned too. James, he said, come up here. I carried my folder to the counter. Chelsea moved aside to make room. She didn't look at me. The clerk asked, Mr. Horton, are you currently employed by Rhodes Home Renewal as its dwelling contractor qualifier? No. One word. Nothing dramatic happened when I said it. The lights stayed the same. The people in the waiting area kept holding their plans. I opened my folder. My employment ended 7 business days ago. Here is the at-will employment letter, my written resignation, proof of delivery, and the company's acknowledgement. I placed the pages on the counter in that order. The clerk read the employment line first. Then she checked the date on my resignation against the received copy in her system. Matthew said, I never accepted that resignation. The clerk didn't look up. I'm not deciding an employment dispute. Then you can't decide he isn't employed. She looked at him. He says he isn't your employee. He delivered written notice. Your email acknowledges the resignation. Do you have documentation showing he resumed employment afterward? Matthew pushed the unsigned offer toward her. We offered reinstatement. She glanced at it. This shows an offer. He is still the individual who reviewed the project. That's not the requirement I'm asking about. He pointed toward me. He's standing right here. He can review the application. I said, I'm not reviewing or approving this application for Rhodes Home Renewal. Chelsea closed her eyes briefly. Matthew turned toward me. You reviewed the plans. I reviewed earlier material while employed. I haven't reviewed the completed engineering as your qualifier. It's right there. Look at it. No. You came all this way to refuse to look at one page? I came because you kept my name on the application. The man waiting behind us shifted his plan tube from one hand to the other. The sound of cardboard scraping against his jacket seemed louder than our voices. The clerk looked at Matthew. Does Rhodes Home Renewal employ another certified qualifier? He didn't answer. She asked again. Do you have another employed qualifier to identify on this application? No, he said. Chelsea turned toward him. You told me you had someone. I said I had leads. You said this was handled. I thought your father would act like family once we were here. The clerk moved the plan slightly away from the application. Mr. Rhodes, I can't accept this application with Mr. Horton listed as the company's employed qualifier. Can you hold it pending? You can return when the company meets the requirement. The customer has a start date. You'll need to address that with the customer. We have engineering, we have insurance, we have everything else. You don't have an employed qualifier. Matthew pointed to my certification record. He's certified. He isn't employed by your company. What if I hire him right now? I answered before the clerk could. I decline. He stared at me. The clerk removed my certification number from the working screen. She drew a line through the qualifier section on the paper application and wrote a short note beside it. No current employed qualifier. Then she stamped the application. Rejected. You may schedule another appointment after you engage a qualifier as an employee. Matthew looked down at the stamp. You're rejecting the whole application over one staffing issue? It's a required credential. Can I speak to a supervisor? You may, but the requirement won't change. He looked around as though someone else might offer a different answer. No one did. The clerk handed back the application and plan set. She retained a copy of my resignation with the appointment record. Then she looked past us. "Next appointment, please." A man with a blue folder stepped forward. That was the public consequence. No lecture, no security, no crowd gathering around us. The city moved to the next customer. Matthew rolled the plans too tightly. One edge bent inward. He tried to straighten it, but the paper kept curling. Chelsea picked up the rejected application. "You used Dad's name after he resigned." Matthew lowered his voice. "We needed the appointment. You told me you were replacing him?" "I tried. You brought the same application. I knew he'd come." She looked at me. "You knew he'd show up, so you left him on it?" Matthew tucked the plans under his arm. I thought when the clerk asked, he'd stop making this personal. I closed my folder. Chelsea held the application in front of him. "You told her he was still employed. It was an argument we could make." "No, it wasn't." He looked at her sharply. "Whose side are you on? Don't do that. We just lost the permit because your father wanted to prove a point. We lost it because you listed someone who quit." The man at the counter glanced toward us. Chelsea lowered her voice. "You let me think you found a solution. I was trying to save the customer by putting Dad's name back in front of him? He was already on the draft. That's worse." Matthew reached for the application. Chelsea held it away. For the first time since the dinner, her anger wasn't aimed only at me. That didn't make us repaired. It only meant she had seen the part Matthew had kept from her. I stepped away from the counter. Matthew followed me into the lobby. "You're satisfied now?" "No, you got exactly what you wanted. I wanted my name removed. Well, it's removed." He said it loudly enough that two people looked over. Chelsea came behind him carrying the application. "Matthew, stop." He faced her. "The customer is expecting us to start. The bank is frozen. Your savings are in the company." And he stood there with a folder ready. "He told us he would. That doesn't make it right. It makes it something you knew." He turned back to me. "You had those pages arranged like you'd been waiting your whole life for this. I arranged 4 documents. You could have stayed home. You could have removed my name. We're going in circles." "No. The clerk made the decision. The clerk made it because you showed up. The clerk had my resignation before today. But you made sure everyone watched." I looked toward the counter. The next customer was asking about a fence. Nobody was watching us now. I didn't invite an audience. You knew it was public. So did you when you used my name? His face tightened. Chelsea touched his sleeve. "We need to call the customer." Matthew pulled away. "I know what I need to do." "Then let's go." He walked toward the exit without waiting for her. Chelsea remained beside me. She looked at the rejected application again. My qualifier number was still visible beneath the clerk's line. "I didn't know," she said. "I know. I thought he had another person. He never gave me a name. He told me it was under control. He believed I'd agree at the counter." She pressed the pages against her coat. "Why didn't you tell me that? I didn't know his plan. I only knew he wouldn't send a corrected application." She looked toward the door where Matthew had gone. "I threatened to file that petition because he said your resignation made no sense. I remember. I moved the money because he said the line would fund once you calmed down. I didn't answer. The transfer had been her choice. Matthew's promise explained it, but it didn't erase it." She wiped at one eye with the side of her finger. "Do you have to stand there looking so calm? I don't know what you want me to do. I don't either." Matthew opened the outer door. "Chelsea." She looked at me once more. "I have to go." "Yes." She started toward him, then stopped. "Did you bring the petition here?" "No." "The bank papers?" "No." "What did you bring?" I opened the folder enough for her to see. Employment letter, resignation, delivery proof, certification record. That's all. That's what the clerk needed. Matthew called her again. Chelsea walked out carrying the rejected application. Through the glass, I watched her hand it to him. He took it without looking at her. They stood beside the truck for a moment, speaking too quietly for me to hear. Then Matthew took out his phone. He had a customer to call, a deposit to address, and no permit to support the start date he'd promised. Chelsea looked back through the glass before getting into the passenger seat. This time, she knew exactly why the application had failed. The customer withdrew that afternoon. I learned that from Matthew, not Chelsea. His email arrived at 4:30 with the subject line, "Result." The customer canceled after we disclosed the permit delay. "We are returning the deposit. This loss was avoidable." I read it once and filed it with the company records. Then I replied, The permit delay resulted from the company applying without an employed qualifier. Do not use my name or certification in future documents. He called 5 minutes later. You couldn't leave the last word alone. I responded to a business email. Do you know what it costs to refund that deposit? The full amount you received. We already paid for planning and material holds. Were those charges authorized in the customer contract? That's not your concern. Then don't ask me to pay them. I didn't ask you to pay. You said the loss was avoidable. It was. It was avoidable before you signed the customer. You really think you bear no responsibility. I resigned before the application was submitted, after we'd committed. That was your decision. He gave a dry laugh. You can keep repeating the timeline. It doesn't change what you did. No, it makes clear what I did. I hope being clear keeps you warm at Christmas. He ended the call. That was Matthew's outcome, at least then. He accepted the permit rejection because the city gave him no alternative. He did not accept responsibility for reaching the counter without a valid qualifier. The bank line remained unfunded. He canceled the equipment orders he could cancel. Some deposits came back. Some fees didn't. Rhodes' home renewal didn't close, but it had no job to start and no permit it could use. Matthew had a company name, insurance bills, a customer refund, and the same staffing problem he'd tried to solve with me. I didn't celebrate any of that. I spent the evening replacing a cracked handle on one of Meredith's old kitchen knives. The wood had loosened around the rivets. I cut 2 new scales from a piece of walnut and shaped them at the bench. It was slow work. That suited me. At 8 the next morning, Chelsea called. Can I come over? What for? To talk. About the company? Not exactly. I waited. She corrected herself. No, not about the company. When? After work. 6 is fine. She arrived at 6:12 carrying the document envelope. I let her in. She took off her boots and placed them neatly beside the door, the way Meredith used to insist. We sat at the kitchen table. Chelsea removed the competency petition and laid it in front of me. I didn't file it. I know you hadn't filed by Wednesday. I'm not going to. She tore the form across the middle. Then she tore it again. She put the pieces back into the envelope. I watched without saying anything. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back, and there were red marks on the bridge of her nose from her glasses. The customer wanted his deposit back immediately, she said. Matthew emailed me. Of course he did. Are you able to return it? Yes, we're returning all of it. What about your savings? We recovered some. We lost some fees. Are your household bills covered? Yes. It was the first direct financial answer Chelsea had given me since the company started. I nodded. She looked toward the refrigerator. Matthew says I shouldn't be here. You're 39. I know how old I am. I'm saying the choice is yours. She folded her hands. I chose to move the money. You told me. I'm not blaming him for that. All right. I also chose to check your mail. Yes. I thought if I knew what you had, I could tell whether you were giving away too much. You could have asked me. You would have said it was none of my business. It was none of your business. She pressed her lips together. I know that now. I didn't make it easier for her by saying everything was fine. She continued. The consultant was my idea too. Matthew agreed, but I called her. Why did you describe missed payments? Because I needed something concrete. You invented something concrete. I made 2 things into one. You changed how you described the break money, and you missed that dental appointment. 1 dental appointment, I know. She looked down. I wanted Linda to confirm what I already thought. And when she didn't, I got angry at you. Yes. The petition was different. How? It was worse. I waited. She touched the document envelope. I downloaded it to scare you into slowing down. Then Matthew said, maybe we should take it seriously because your decisions were hurting the business. You filled it out together. Yes. You connected my judgment to my resignation. Yes. The guarantee wasn't included. No. She didn't defend any of it. That mattered, but it didn't restore trust. Why didn't you know my name was still on the application? I asked. Matthew told me he was working on a replacement. That was true. He also said you'd probably cooperate if the city needed a transition answer. What did you think that meant? I thought he had someone lined up and only needed you to confirm old job notes. He never gave me a name. I didn't ask for one. Why not? Because I wanted to believe it was handled. I understood that answer more than I liked. I had done the same thing when Matthew said insurance was moving, financing was being handled, and the customer package was still being assembled. Chelsea and I had both accepted vague answers because the clear ones might have forced a decision sooner. She rubbed her thumb along a scratch in the table. When I saw your name on the application, I knew he'd planned to put you on the spot. He believed I'd give in. So did I. That's why you came? Yes. She looked at me. I'm sorry. I let the words sit. Then I said, I hear you. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That's all? For now. I tore up the petition. That stopped something that shouldn't have started. She leaned back. What am I supposed to do? You asked for contact. You came here. We're talking. But you don't forgive me. I didn't say that. You didn't say you did. I'm not ready to act as though an apology fixes the mail, the consultant, or that petition. I can't undo those. No? So, what can I do? Respect the next no without trying to make it evidence against me. She looked at the envelope again. Give me an example. You don't get access to my mail or accounts. All right? You don't arrange an assessment, appointment, or service for me unless I ask. All right? My certification doesn't return to Matthew's company. I know. My credit doesn't support it. I know. And I'm not coming to Hazel Street as unpaid labor. She hesitated. What if I need help? Ask directly. I'll answer directly. You might say no. Yes. She looked hurt, but she nodded. I continued. If I say yes to coffee, it means coffee. If I say yes to dinner, it means dinner. It doesn't mean I've agreed to inspect a bathroom while I'm there. That sounds very formal. It has to be clear for a while. How long? I don't know. She gathered the torn petition pieces into the envelope. Are you still going to answer if I call? Yes. Even if Matthew doesn't apologize, you're responsible for your contact with me. He's responsible for his. She stood. At the door, she put on her boots and reached for her coat. I did miss you, she said. I missed you too. She started to hug me, then stopped. I opened my arms. The hug lasted only a few seconds. It did not feel like the old ones. That was probably good. The old ones had carried too many unspoken agreements. After she left, I received another email from Matthew. It included a corrected internal company record showing that my employment had ended on the date of my resignation. He had also removed my name from the application file. The message said, "This should satisfy your documentation concerns." There was no apology. I answered, "Received." That was enough for the business relationship. It was not a family repair. Over the next week, Chelsea called twice. The first call concerned the money she had moved. She wanted to know whether she should take a penalty to recover the rest quickly. I said, "That's a decision for you and Matthew. I won't replace what you lost. I wasn't asking you to. I needed to say it clearly. I understand." The second call concerned a loose railing at Hazel Street. She said, "I'm asking directly. Would you look at it if I pay your normal rate?" No. She went quiet. Then she said, "All right, I'll call someone." There was no argument, no mention of Meredith, no sudden concern about my judgment. 2 days later, she texted me the name of the carpenter she had hired and said the railing was fixed. That small action told me more than another apology would have. On Sunday afternoon, another message arrived. Could I come by Tuesday for coffee? Nothing needs fixing. I won't bring papers. I read it several times before answering. Tuesday at 6, coffee only. She replied, coffee only. Tuesday evening, Chelsea arrived at 6 with nothing in her hands. She stood on the porch and held her arms slightly away from her coat. "No folder," she said. "I can see that. No broken appliance either. That's a good start." I let her in. She sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee. At first, we talked about the weather because neither of us trusted the larger subjects. Then I asked about her training program. She explained what the final project had involved. I listened without checking the clock or looking for the request hidden behind her answer. There wasn't one. After half an hour, she asked, "What are you working on in the shop?" "A knife handle." "Can I see it?" We carried our coffee into the workshop. I showed her the walnut scales and the brass pins. She picked up the finished knife carefully. "Mom's old one?" "Yes. She used this for everything. Even after I bought her better knives." Chelsea smiled. She said this one fit her hand. That's why I repaired it. She set it down where she'd found it. We returned to the kitchen. At 7, she put on her coat. "That was coffee," she said. "It was. Only coffee." "Yes." She looked almost surprised that I wasn't asking her to stay longer. At the door, she hugged me. "I'll call you. Call when you want to talk. I know." The next contact came 4 days later. She called while I was sorting clamps. "I have a direct question." "All right. Can I borrow your stud finder? I want to hang a shelf. Do you know how to use it? Not well. You can borrow it. Come by tomorrow and I'll show you. How much? Nothing. I'm showing you how to use a tool. I'm not hanging the shelf. Understood. She came the next morning. I demonstrated the settings on a scrap wall in the workshop. She practiced finding 3 studs and marked them with painter's tape. Why does it beep over the electrical box? She asked. Because it's sensing more than wood. That's why you check what's around the spot before drilling. She took notes on her phone. I didn't follow her to Hazel Street. I didn't load my drill. I didn't buy the anchors. 2 days later, she returned the stud finder in its case. The shelf is up, she said. Level, close enough. Then it's yours. She laughed. That was help. It wasn't employment, proof of love, or a bill waiting to become coffee. The customer deposit was fully returned by the end of that month. Chelsea told me after asking whether I was willing to hear a company update. The customer has his money, she said. Good. We lost the job. I'm sorry. Matthew says he may approach the customer again later. That's up to the customer. The bank won't reopen the line without a different guarantee or more operating history. I'm still not signing. I'm not asking. She said it without irritation. Some of the household money came back when Matthew canceled equipment orders. Some did not. Chelsea and Matthew adjusted their spending and rebuilt their emergency savings gradually. I didn't replace the loss. The first time Chelsea mentioned an unexpected bill, I felt the old response rise in me. How much do you need? Had once come out before she finished explaining. This time I asked, what are you planning to do? We're cutting back for a few months. Is that manageable? Yes. Then we moved to another subject. Matthew didn't speak to me for several weeks. His only communication was a company email asking me to confirm I had no remaining Rhodes home renewal property. I checked the workshop. The company had never supplied me with much. I found one tape measure with its logo and a packet of blank estimate sheets. I put them in a box and told him when he could collect it. He arrived alone. I met him in the driveway. He opened the box and looked through it. That everything? Yes. He closed the flaps. We hired someone. A qualifier? Yes. Full-time employee. Market wage. That's what you needed. He starts next month. Good. Matthew lifted the box but didn't leave. We're delaying the launch until then. That makes sense. We're also building more reserve before signing another customer. I nodded. He looked toward the workshop. I still think you could have given us more time. You're allowed to think that. But I shouldn't have kept your name on the application. No. I thought you'd give in at the counter. I know. He shifted the box against his hip. I was wrong about that. It wasn't a full apology. He didn't mention the guarantee or the pressure he'd put on Chelsea. He didn't ask what the petition had done to me. Still, he had hired the person the company required and agreed to pay that person properly. He had postponed the business instead of carrying forward a permit under my name. That action mattered more than a polished speech. Do it correctly this time, I said. We will. He put the box in his truck. Our relationship remained limited. We could stand in a driveway and speak without shouting. We were not friends, and I was no longer his inexpensive path into the remodeling business. Over the following months, Rhodes Home Renewal completed its preparation. Matthew had the structural details reviewed before making promises. He updated the company contracts and stopped treating customer deposits like available profit. The new qualifier reviewed the work as a paid employee. I knew those things because Matthew eventually told me himself. He called one afternoon. I'm not asking you to do anything, he began. All right? We got a smaller bathroom job permitted. Congratulations. The new qualifier made me change the ventilation plan. Was the change needed? Yes. Then you hired the right person. He gave a short laugh. That's what she said? He didn't ask me to second-guess her. I didn't offer. The company started slowly. It did not become an instant success, and it did not collapse. Matthew had to price the real cost of qualified work into each job. That made some estimates higher. It also kept his promises closer to what he could deliver. My name never appeared on another application. Chelsea's repair with me moved slowly too. We tried dinner at Hazel Street again. Before I went, she said, "No work, no company papers." Matthew knows. When I arrived, one kitchen cabinet door hung slightly crooked. I noticed it the second I entered. No one mentioned it. We ate meatloaf and potatoes. Matthew talked about football. Chelsea told me about a woman at work who kept stealing everyone's good pens. The crooked cabinet remained crooked when I left. A week later, Chelsea asked whether I would come with her to choose replacement hinges. I can tell you which type to buy, I said. I'm not installing them. That's what I'm asking. At the store, she paid for the hinges. Matthew installed them. The next time I visited, the cabinet door hung straight. There were setbacks. Once, Chelsea called and started describing a noise in her car. Halfway through, she stopped. I'm hinting again. Yes. Can I ask for advice? Yes. Do you think I should take it to a mechanic? Based on that noise, yes. Will you pay for it? No. I wasn't going to ask. You asked directly. I wanted to know whether the answer stayed the same. It does. All right, she made the appointment herself. Another time, I became sick with a bad cold and didn't answer her morning message. She drove to my house without calling. When I opened the door, she was holding soup and looking frightened. I know I'm not supposed to arrange things, she said. Bringing soup isn't arranging my life. Do you need a doctor? No. Do you want me to stay? An hour would be nice. She stayed an hour. She didn't touch my mail. She didn't count my medication. She didn't call anyone about me. We watched part of an old home renovation program and argued about whether the kitchen island was too large. Then she took her empty container and left. That visit repaired something the apologies couldn't reach. She had come because I didn't answer, but she asked before taking over. She stayed because I said yes. When the hour ended, she trusted me enough to go home. The anniversary of Meredith's death came later that year. Chelsea called the day before. Do you want company tomorrow? Yes. What do you want to do? Come for dinner? Should I bring anything? Bring yourself. She arrived with an old photograph of Meredith standing in our first kitchen. Meredith wore work gloves because she'd been helping me strip wallpaper. There was paste in her hair. Chelsea set the picture on the counter. I found this in my desk. I took that. I know. Your thumb is over the corner. We cooked together and talked about her mother without using her as a vote in any argument. Chelsea remembered the songs Meredith played while cleaning. I remembered how she refused to measure flour correctly. Nothing about the evening decided what Meredith would have wanted from either of us. She was simply missed. Before Chelsea left, she copied the apple crisp recipe from the stained card. She didn't take the original. Months passed before she asked to make it with me. By then, coffee had become ordinary again. Some visits lasted 20 minutes, some lasted 2 hours. A few weeks passed with only a phone call. I stopped counting contact as proof that I had done enough. I also stopped keeping useful objects in my truck, just in case Chelsea needed something. If she asked, I decided based on the request, not on how long it had been since she last called. If you stayed with me through all of this, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you draw the line between helping family and carrying its risk. On a cold Sunday evening, Chelsea came through my kitchen door carrying a paper bag of apples. I bought too many, she said. You bought exactly enough. We used Meredith's stained recipe card. Chelsea measured the oats while I peeled the apples. She started to add more sugar, then looked at me. Too much? Your mother would have said no. What do you say? I say half of that. She used half. While the crisp baked, we sat with coffee and talked about her work. No one mentioned the company. No one asked for a repair, a signature, or a favor. When the timer rang, Chelsea brought out 2 bowls. I set down 2 spoons. There were 2 bowls of apple crisp on my scarred kitchen table, with no papers between them.